What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Monday show, gang. Good to see everybody. Couple minutes late getting started. Apologies about that. Didn't mean to keep everybody waiting. Was just getting that Diamondbacks lineup in. Just came out a couple minutes ago. No surprises in that one. But the week is off to a good start so far. Nice little brunch with the parents who finally made their way back from Florida. They were flying on Saturday. If you remember last week, I was taking care of their dog. Just handed them back off today, but they were flying on Saturday when that CrowdStrike thing hit. So they got completely screwed by that, and then they were flying out of Miami, and there was all kinds of security issues later in the night. Ended up having to stay overnight Saturday. So they made their way back up here, and we got together this morning to hand the dog off. Had some brunch, spent some time with the slate before that, spent some time with the slate after that. Looks like a pretty good one DFS-wise. Got some good pitching spots, couple primed hitting spots. 9-gamer, lot to talk about, so we're going to dive right into it, but let's say hi to everybody first, of course. Cujo's here. Hope your day's going well too, Cuj. Hope everybody's day is going well. Week is starting out good. Hope everybody had good weekends. Nice profitable weekend here. Solid second on FanDuel on Friday night. That was nice. Saw a couple decent results in the Discord, so hopefully we had some winners over the weekend. We hit the Tyler O'Neill double dong the other night. Missed with Will Benson yesterday. Really liked that red spot yesterday. It didn't really come through. Thought Will Benson would get there. Thought we had a good one on our hands, but we've got a couple real standout looking spots to address today. Kenneth Woodhouse is here hanging out. Good to see you, buddy. Cujo, Travis Wyndham, Travis Duarte. Our Travis Squared is in the house. Love to see it. Mom is here as usual. Who else? Andy Melman's here. And some other people hanging out. So let's get this thing rolling. Start with the rundown on the games, the different game environments. We do have a little bit of weather to worry about. Looks like the most concerning spot is the Phillies at the Twins game, which is a shame because I like the look of the Phillies' power that they're showing against Bailey Ober. But Ober's a good pitcher as well. You can see it's not a monster total. It's one that's just kind of looking decent model-wise. A little bit more than maybe it's popping elsewhere, a little bit more than maybe Vegas sees it. So I really want that one to play. Looking at Ross' report earlier, he had it as yellow. Seemed fairly concerning. Seemed pretty variable, though, so maybe we'll check back on it, see how it looks as we get a little bit later in the show, a little bit closer to lock. But starting at the top of the board, the Reds at the Braves, 7.5 run total in that one. That one's also got a little bit of weather. It doesn't look as bad as the Minnesota game. Roth had a yellow-green. His reporting is there's weather in the area, but it would take something landing directly over the stadium to probably cause a delay. Seems like that one's okay. 7.5 run total there. It's Reynaldo Lopez going for the Braves against Hunter Green for the Reds. 3.48 implied total, 3.49 on the Red side, 4.10 on the Braves side. Reds are looking decent again today in the model. There's a few teams ranked ahead of them, but they look like a reasonably good value play. Ronaldo's really good, but there's just some interesting DFS bats on that Red squad. So might be a somewhat underrated spot, but I didn't want to press them up or anything like that because of that low run total and because of how good Ronaldo's been for most of this year. Braves, usual, a little bit of underperformance from them so far this season. An opportunity against Hunter Green to maybe find a little bit of power, maybe exploit some inefficiency, some walks that can crop up from time to time with Green, but he's also got a lot of upside individually, a lot of strikeouts in that Braves lineup, and he's talented enough to go find them. So it's an interesting four corners game at the top there. Like I said, the Phils potentially a little bit sneaky, underappreciated against Bailey Ober. If you catch Bailey Ober on the wrong day, you got to find a bunch of power. He's given up home runs in each of his last two, but he's pitched well overall. He's had complete games in a run of 5 straight starts, including a complete game. 2 earned runs, 4 hits, and quality starts across those 5, pitching 6 or 6+ in each of them. 8 to 10 strikeouts in 4 out of the 5. So good pitcher going up against a very talented Phillies lineup that is showing power. Seems like a spot where maybe we could pick off the Phillies at a little bit of low ownership. They didn't look all that popular. I mean, Kyle Schwarber, the home run pick of the day, to kind of point in that direction. And we've got all 3 of Schwarb's, Turner, and Harper up over the magic number for home run upside. So kind of interesting spot. The Twins on the other side, not quite as interesting. They're going up against Ranger Suarez. He's a very good at run suppression. He's got them down at a 3.98 implied total. They weren't looking all that good in the model against Suarez, and just a bit of a diminished Twin squad. Carlos Correa went on the IL, so just a little bit short-handed. I don't really like the opportunity for the Twins, and I think that Suarez probably is an interesting consideration on the mound. The Brewers at the Cubs, an 8.5 run total in that game. 4.38 implied total on the Brewers side, 4.20 on the Cubs side. Looks like a decent spot to maybe mine some bats. It's Tobias Myers against Javier Assad. Neither pitcher is overly compelling. Both might fit in for value. We'll take a look at where they stack up. But I'm more inclined to look toward bats in that one. White Sox and the Rangers, probably pretty similar in terms of some Rangers bats against Eric Fede. You can see a pretty healthy 4.83 implied total for the Rangers. Second highest on the slate behind the monster number for the Red Sox in Coors Field in a couple games. And then it's Michael Lorenzen going for the Rangers. Not an overwhelmingly strong opportunity. Lorenzen's not that good, but you don't have to be that good to beat this White Sox team. 3.77 implied total for Chicago. I think he's at least good enough to consider at price. We'll take a look at him. But there's a lot of ugly games on his ledger this season, a lot of short starts as well. So you don't get a ton of depth out of him, but it is a very appealing matchup and doesn't really lead me to White Sox bats. He's not bad to the point that you would necessarily target him. They're very cheap. They're not going to be popular, but there's not a lot of quality there. Diamondbacks at the Royals, an 8.5 run total there, 4.71 implied total on the Kansas City side. They're looking pretty strong offensively. They're going up against Gilbert Diaz in his third start. He went 6 innings in each of his first 2. Just gave up 1 run on 4 hits exactly in each of those games. Wasn't overly strong in terms of strikeouts. 5 strikeouts in one game, 2 strikeouts in another. I think we can easily favor the Kansas City bats. And then it's Cole Ragans on the mound going up against Arizona. So Diamondbacks checking in at a 3.89. That honestly feels a little bit high for matching up against Cole Ragans. Pretty solid pitcher. So Diamondbacks overall fairly successful against lefties, but I like the spot for the pitcher and don't love the spot for their bats. Coors Field, you get Austin Gomber against Tanner Houck. I do think, given the success that we've seen a lot of less talented pitchers have at Coors Field against this Rockies squad this year, including yesterday, Hayden Birdsong stepping up with 12 strikeouts. Monster game. Tanner Houck not off the board. 4.49 implied total on the other side for the Rockies. Houck definitely good enough to beat them in their ballpark. Definitely talented enough to beat Coors Field as well. So not out of consideration. Not the most appealing pitcher on the slate, given the ballpark and everything, but he's on the board. Austin Gomber very much no, and the Red Sox bats very much yes, but they're going to be popular. Astros against the A's, a 4.66 implied total on the Houston side. They're going up against Hogan Harris. Definitely a targetable spot there. And then the A's, kind of middle of the board, 3.93 implied total. They're facing Spencer Arrighetti, who's had some good games this season. He's not bad overall. But for the course of the entire slate, to grab a underappreciated A's team that does have, Juan Soto, another home run. An underappreciated A's team that does have a interesting enough total and some interesting bats on that squad with Brent Rooker having a very, very strong season with Lawrence Butler surging recently, and then a couple semi-interesting power bats through that lineup. I think they could be an underappreciated squad as far as angling in at lower ownership on this one. The Angels and the Mariners, it's Bryce Miller for the Mariners. Like that spot quite a bit. 3.35 implied total on the Angel side. Miller very high end and definitely looks playable. Tyler Anderson coming back the other way for the Angels against that really weak Mariner squad. They're pulling in a 4.323 implied total. I think they are on the board to maybe consider some of the bats against Anderson, but he's by and large been pretty good this year. Number of games in here with 4 runs, but not many blowups. Just one ugly game 3 games ago on the 30th of June, gave up 6 earned runs to the Tigers. It's his worst game of the season. He had a monster. He came out of that one, faced the Cubs at Wrigley and struck out 10, gave up no runs on 3 hits over 8 innings. So he's capable of big enough starts, and the Mariners have been really targetable all season. Giants and the Dodgers to round things out, a 4.47 implied total for Los Angeles, going up against Blake Snell. Interesting spot there. Snell went 7 in his most recent start. 1 hitter, struck out 8, no earned runs. That was against Minnesota. I don't see any reason to really run away from Blake Snell other than, the tricky opponent. Dodgers, not overly appealing given where their prices typically fall, what the bottom of that lineup has looked like lately. So I don't love either side of that, but I think I come away a little bit more inclined to go toward Blake Snell at probably under-owned as an under-owned option. And then on the other side, making his Major League debut, River Ryan for the Dodgers. Kid has started at the developmental complex, pitched in A-ball, and then jumped to 5 starts in AAA. It amounts to about 20 and change innings this year. Last year, he made 22 AA starts through 97 and a third innings. Not a lot of track record for the 25-year-old through the minor leagues, but regarded as a high-end kid, could be an interesting spot. We'll take a look. As we're getting later into the season, we got a couple debuts and call-ups to deal with post-All-Star break, and we'll have more after some of these teams clean house. You can see one of them down here, the bottom. The reason I bring it up, the bottom of the Braves lineup, Ignacio Nacho Alvarez, big-time prospect for them. Not on either slate tonight, but potentially an interesting bat in that Braves lineup going forward. Lone Wolf picked up a third yesterday in the $20 3 max. Nice. Congrats, buddy. Sounds pretty good. Industry talking about... Who are you guys talking about? Who are you talking about, Lone Wolf? That industry's talking about quite a bit. Oh, Bregman? Yeah, Lawrence Butler's definitely been good. He's an interesting bat. I've been keeping him Bregman. Yeah, I've been including him in A stacks recently. I really like the way the recent contact profile, and obviously the recent results have been really good. But yeah, that's definitely one to watch second half. He's on a lot of different lists for second half. Players to watch, players to pick up for the second half, so on and so forth in season long. Anyway, top of the board, high priced Cole Ragans, but very worth it, in my opinion. 10-9. Offset by a little bit in terms of his projection. Not much. You're talking about point and change on the FanDuel scale and less than that on the DraftKings board. Very interesting pitcher. Very high end. Can run away with any given slate that he's on. Not the easiest opponent in the world for him, but definitely good enough to beat this Diamondbacks team. Hunter Green going up against Atlanta. Like I said, it's kind of both sides either. He can be inefficient. He can lose some power. He can lose some walks. Braves are good enough to beat him for sure, but he's also good enough to go back and beat them. 9,900 on FanDuel is reasonable. 8,200 is where he's very, very interesting on DraftKings. You could go top 2 there, 9,000, 8,200, and not be bad off for your pitching investment. Ronaldo against Cincinnati. Again, the Reds' bats are showing a little bit of quality against, but Ronaldo's been very good, and he is pretty good. 9,900 and 9,000 across sites, I think, is very reasonable with where everybody's priced. Ranger Suarez against Minnesota, definitely interested in that spot. 10-7, 8,800, especially on DraftKings. Ranger's a very interesting pitcher at that price. Ober is the tough one. 9,200 on FanDuel, I'm more inclined to not skip completely across 150 lineups, but if I'm building one, if I'm building 5, I don't necessarily need to go to Ober. I can maneuver around that spot. I really like the look of the Phillies bats on the other side if they're going to be at low ownership, but if I took a big chunk of Phillies, let's say I was building 5 lineups and I took 3 of them included Phillies, I might consider Ober at that point for one of those pitching shares. On DraftKings, I think you would consider him quite a bit more because he's only 8,300. I think he's very, very easily in that SP2 mix or even in SP1 for a cheap price. And I really like the idea, looking at the pricing, of just considering, you can rotate Hunter Green, Bailey Ober, and Bryce Miller in a pool. You could even throw maybe Blake Snell into that pool at 75 and honestly Tanner Houck at 85. I might even give you Spencer Arrighetti at 78. You could create if you're using optimizers, if you're building out 150, even if you're building out 20, it might be worth the exercise on DraftKings, just given this pool of pitchers at very, very reasonable prices, to run a few full crunches. You know, if you're building out, let's say, a pool of 1,000 lineups to choose from, maybe you run 600 lineups off with everybody in, and then maybe you make a separate set of lineups, or maybe it's only 200, 300, where you just include like those four, and then whether you want Arrighetti or not. But like this little group of pitchers, and just use those guys, and just have just to create a pool where it mixes up a lot of shares of those guys combined, because there's a lot of purchasing power with using those combination of those guys at SP1, SP2, and just kind of forgoing. It's not even hugely different pricing, but saving that $700-800 up to the 9,000 range on DraftKings today could be kind of interesting, because there's really not that much difference between any of those guys in their matchups and, let's say, Cole Ragans against Arizona, Ronaldo against Cincinnati. You've definitely got two very high-end pitchers there, both of which are, Ronaldo is going up against a team with a lot of strikeout, not necessarily Ragans. But I think that's an interesting exercise to just see what those lineups look like. If you wanted to go a little step further, you could include like Tyler Anderson down there. I don't love Tobias Myers, and nobody else down this way is all that interesting. So I think that would be an interesting way to go about it. Or you could just say, hey, I'm just going to draw a cut line there at 7,900 and let the optimizer do its thing. Because again, there's not a huge price offset between those guys. But that is a very interesting group of pitchers at price. Miller looks terrific to me. Really like the option at 8,600 on FanDuel against that Angel squad. They're going to be getting Mike Trout back apparently as soon as this week. So hopefully they'll take a little step forward in class overall. Just have an interesting team out there. But in this spot, I kind of like Bryce Miller and his talent. 8,400 on DraftKings is a very good price. Blake Snell for 7,400, 7,500 definitely looks interesting, even against a low strikeout Dodgers team. That's just a really good price for Blake Snell. He's got major upside, and we're getting full innings. So, you know, you take the bad with the good in terms of inefficiency, high walks a lot of the time, and a little bit of short start potential out of Blake Snell. But that's taking the good with the bad, taking the bad with the extreme good, and there's a very large ceiling on that pitcher, even against that Dodgers team. Houck, again, good enough to beat Colorado, good enough to beat the environment and that team, so he's in consideration there. I don't dislike that spot all that much. For a Coors game, anyway. Pop that one in there. I'm just putting my placeholders in as I'm talking this through. Spencer Arrighetti can beat that Oakland squad, but I do think they're interesting and worth consideration on the other side of that one. 76, 78 across sites when he projects out for 15 DraftKings points, though. Definitely interesting. Depends a little bit on what the ceiling looks like by comparison to some guys at very similar pricing who do have more individual upside, but matchup-based upside is there for Arrighetti for sure. Myers I don't love against the Cubs for similar prices. He projects out a couple points lower on the FanDuel scale, a little bit closer on DraftKings, and you get him for 600 less on the DraftKings slate. So I guess he does qualify for the bargain bin. But it's a weird, just kind of a day where, you know, maybe this is the bargain bin in when you're already shopping in like a discounted retail kind of a store, not necessarily a dollar store, but one of the lower cost, like, you know, Target type places. But I guess lower cost than Target. I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say. It's a day where there's a lot of value at pitcher, I guess is the point. Anderson against Seattle is definitely one of them on DraftKings, 7,900. You can see the offset in price. 9,600, he's a lot more difficult to reach on FanDuel, but what I think that does is just renders him a lot lower owned than he probably should be, because that is a very good matchup. 7,900 on DraftKings just fits right into this group, so I would probably consider including him in that pool of pitchers. Eric Fedde is a big no for me against Texas, with them drawing the second highest total on the board. Michael Lorenzen, even against Chicago, kind of a stretch to really get there. You can throw a few darts at it, but he's not really cheap enough for that. I'd just rather spend that 76, you know, on any of these guys. And on FanDuel at 81, when I've got these options in the sevens, including Blake Snell, I'd just really rather not. I've got Assad 82-71 against Milwaukee. Maybe qualifies for the bargain bin, but probably not. 68 for River Ryan. Look at the innings in his game log here. He was given us reasonable depth in his AAA starts. It's just there's not a lot of experience here. More likely than not, that's not a great spot, even at price. Because you run the risk of just like, hey, kid, you gave us 4 good innings. Like, congrats, let's get you out of there. You run the risk of a kid who really doesn't have a lot of advanced pitching experience running into a not completely awful Giants lineup. I don't love that spot even at price. Jupiter Diaz, I think 9,400, 8,000 across sites, unless I'm missing something, is just wildly mispriced. We'll give it a look. Hogan Harris against the Astros is a no, and Austin Comber at Coors Field is a big no against the Red Sox, rather. Oh, looks like a bunch of lineups came in. We got the Reds, which is good for this first game. We'll start there. Braves was in already. Let's see. I'm just curious. Am I missing something on Jupiter Diaz? I guess those were 2 effective starts. I'm jumping ahead and not talking to you guys. Apologies for that. I'm just looking if maybe I should lean on that spot a little bit and give them or take a look at the back end projections, but back end was just updated over the All-Star break. There's should all be included here. I'm curious as to how he got so expensive. It's just based on those 2 good starts. He wasn't bad in the minors. He's not overly standout. We'll give it a look. Anyway, this game, 8,200, 9,900 for Hunter Green off the top. Not a bad spot to consider. 3.34 ERA, a 4.17 xFIP. Too many walks, but a lot of strikeouts. 27.6% strikeouts. Gives you pretty good depth. 19 starts, 110 and a third. 12.8% swinging strike rate. Just a 1.11 whip against a 9.9% walk rate is not bad. And he's been managing the home runs pretty effectively this year. Just 33.1% hard hits, 87.5 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 5.1% barrel. It's just a fly ball trajectory kind of a pitcher against a homer-happy team, at least on a good day. Could lead to some slips. And you've had a few of those spots, just 2 games this year actually with 2 home runs allowed, a few games with a single home run. It's more the walks that you got to worry about. The walks do lead to, when he loses a little bit of power, then it becomes a larger inning than a lot of other pitchers because there's typically guys on base via the walk. But he's got enough stuff to punch his way out of trouble. I love the price at 8,200 on DraftKings, 99. I think I would consider him. Across a bunch of lineups. Definitely. He's probably not my go-to in one lineup at that price especially. But across 5, he's probably in 10, he's in at least one of them. Across 5, maybe he doesn't make the cut. Deep pitching slate. On the other side, Ronaldo, 9,000, 9,900, 24.6% strikeout rate this season for him. A sparkling 1.88 ERA, but a 3.79 xFIP is a lot more realistic. Last time out on the 13th, he faced the Padres. He went 6, gave up 3 earned runs on 11 hits, struck out just 2. Pretty lucky to only give up 3 earned runs on 11 hits. Hard hits sitting at 40.1% and 8.6% barrel rate. Probably a little bit lucky on a 15-degree average launch to be only giving up 1.55% home runs. 94.84 by Stuff Plus, so we're talking about a pitcher operating about 5 points below average as far as the makeup, the shape of the arsenal goes. You can see the monster difference as far as that category across the other side. Hunter Green, 124.25. Stuff Plus loves Hunter Green. Your results may vary. Same thing with Ronaldo. Again, he has been terrific this season. But probably getting a little lucky to get there. All indicators are for that. So again, when I say I like the Reds, for one, there's a lot of support in these projections for that. The average came down a little bit because we don't have what's-his-face in the lineup. The dude who had the monster couple of games that just got called up. Whatever his name is. He was pulling a huge projection, but he's not in the actual lineup. We've got Noelvin Marte, who I skipped yesterday, and he hit the home run when I was going to this team yesterday, or the day before, yesterday. He's sitting at just 79 plate appearances, 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, but 176, 215, 284, and a 33 WRC plus in the 7 spot. 3,300 and 2,800 across sites, just a third baseman on the DraftKings slate. The shortstop eligibility doesn't really move the needle that much on FanDuel because there's a lot of more interesting shortstops, including a guy on his own team in Ellie. 4,100 for him, 5,900 on DraftKings. No discount, but getting absolutely monster fantasy production. If you're building red stacks, you're not skipping Ellie De La Cruz all that often. 9.17 in the home run model for him. Him or Candelario at 9.24, and then a 7.96 for Spencer Steer with multi-position eligibility for both of those two players. Makes it easy to flex this team around with a lot of other teams on the board. You can put this team basically all through the infield and then get to an outfield-heavy team. You can go the opposite direction and use some of the outfielders because they've got some compelling names later in the lineup. They're a good team to stack with, and they come at reasonable prices. Ellie's superstar price, but everybody else in the lineup is at least affordable. So it's not a bad squad to work with. It's just, I don't, again, love that Vegas total. But I think maybe that's getting a little bit more credit than Ronaldo's actually worth. You know, on paper, there's a lot to worry about in any given matchup. He's just made it work basically every time out in his 17 starts. Gun to my head, though, I think I lean Reds. I would take my shot that way. India off the top for 4,300, 3,200, 275, 379, 422 this season. His creator runs 25% better than average. He's been holding down that leadoff spot pretty effectively in terms of getting on base, setting the table for the rest of this offense. I already mentioned Ellie. Love the player. 17 home runs, 48 stolen bases at 226 ISO, 12.4% barrels, and 43.8% hard hits. Strikeouts are down slightly. Walks are up. He's definitely taken some strides this year. He's absolutely terrific. Candelario and Steer provide some power from either side of the plate. Candelario, a switch hitter, and Steer, a right-handed bat. 16 home runs and 15 home runs. Steer also steals bags, 15 stolen bases on the season, a 110 WRC plus for him. Tyler Stevenson, a very good offensive catcher who hits the ball extremely hard, 10.1% barrels and 45.7% hard hits that he's turned into 11 home runs in just 287 opportunities. Checks in at just 3,700 where you need catchers, 2,900 where you don't. With all the positional flex for anybody with first base eligibility on this team, you can absolutely consider Stevenson a first baseman in this lineup and just go, first base, second base, third base right there if you want those three players. Obviously, you get the catcher and first base is the same thing. But what I'm saying is, considering the position, you're not using first base and util to put a catcher in your lineup on FanDuel with this team, which is very much the case with a lot of teams. When you want to, you go to a lot of times you stack the Orioles and you want Mountcastle and Adley, or you go to the Brewers and you want Rhys Hoskins and Contreras. Probably better examples. The Cards, you want the other Contreras and Paul Goldschmidt, maybe. Looking down the lineup at some of those more interesting, some of those interesting outfielders, Jake Fraley for 35-28 provides a little bit of stolen base and correlated scoring upside. A 332 on base for what he does is not bad. Giving you just a 92 WRC plus in a backward-looking sense, but there's more upside there. Jake Fraley fairly incapable for the money in the outfield. I like quite a bit better. I like Will Benson at the bottom of the lineup. He's just a lot more inconsistent, a lot less consistent. 275 on base, a 188 average, 10 home runs, 11 stolen bases. The counting stats are nice. He's just difficult to rely on, but there's major ceiling any given slate, and he makes consistently good contact when he happens to connect. It's just the 40+% strikeouts that are a big part of the problem. He's very cheap. Stuart Fairchild for 3,000, 2,600, maybe split the difference. He's got 6 home runs, 12 steals, just an 84 WRC plus, a 299 on base, a little bit better average. Hits the ball fairly effectively. Not a bad consideration at 3,000, 2,600, but I think I go 1, 2, 3 between the outfielders. And then Marte, mix and match talent right now, and as far as what he's shown, but has the reputation for being a pretty premium kid. On the Braves side, pretty consistent version of the lineup through the top 7 or 8. Jarred Kelenic continues to hit leadoff, making very good contact with a 10% barrel, 45.3% hard hit. 11 home runs is good. 175 ISO is all right. A 102 WRC plus, borderlines 2 points above league average. 301 on base needs to improve to keep that leadoff spot occupied. 28.4% Ks, just a 6.5% walk rate. He could improve in those departments. But overall, for the money, especially DFS-wise, there's a lot of upside there. It's just not the guy who's going to get up there and necessarily draw a walk in the leadoff role, exploit what Hunter Green does badly, and set the table for the rest of these guys. He's capable of doing that, but it's not the most frequent result. Austin Riley hitting second is kind of interesting. 5,100, 3,500 cross sides for him. 13 home runs on the season, 199 ISO, 119 WRC plus. Additional potential plate appearances, by moving up the lineup by a spot or two. So not a bad day to play Austin Riley. Marcell Ozuna, 6,000, 4,100, their best player this season. 28 homers, a 286 ISO, creator run 69% better than average. If you want him, he's there. Obviously, there's gigantic upside. There's big ceiling, 13.37 in the home run model. I like the player quite a bit. Very, very pricey on not necessarily the most compelling day to stack Braves, though. Matty Olson for 5,000, 3,400. He's got 13 home runs. Everything else about the line is a little bit off this season, including the barrels and the hard hit. They're both down by a handful of points. Strikeouts are a little bit up. Walks are a little bit down. Hasn't been the same Matt Olson. This is like the Matt Olson from 3-4 years ago with Oakland. But if I'm betting on a group of players to succeed, if I had to make a list of, say, 5 players who are going to have monster second halves, I think Matt Olson would be on that list. I just really believe in the bat. And even if we just get a big power surge, DFS-wise, it's all we really care about. I don't really care if the average comes around as long as the contact comes around. And I think he's more than capable of delivering that. You get a little discount on him these days. Adam Duvall for 33.27. Just kind of a righty potential home run waiting to happen for a very cheap price. He does have an 11% barrel rate, but not very consistent. A lot of strikeouts. 185, 248 on the front end of the slash, over 270 plate appearances isn't great. Same thing with Eddie Rosario from the other side of the plate. Duvall's a righty, Eddie's a lefty. 9 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 57 WRC plus out of him. 42.3% hard hits, so he's the opposite, where he's got a qualifying hard hit rate at 42.3%, but just a 5.6% barrel. If you could combine those two guys into one switch hitter, that would be an okay power bat. Like literally, if you just put those numbers together, you'd still be sub Mendoza and a 250-ish on base or 235-ish on base. But at least you'd have 17 home runs and 8 stolen bases. That's a reasonable fantasy player. Unfortunately, you can't do that. Not without occupying 2 spots in your lineup. I just spilled some water on the desk over here. Love Sean Murphy at catcher, 33.27. There is potential there any given slate. That said, over 123 opportunities this year. 5 home runs is okay. But the 159 ISO's off the mark, 25 points below average for run creation and an ugly slash line. Orlando Arcia hasn't gotten anything going all year. He's been continuing his decline, in fact. 212, 246 now in the front side of the triple slash. No power to speak of this season. 7 home runs is okay, but just a 120 ISO, 57 WRC plus. And then Nacho Alvarez not on either slate, making his debut, but supposed to be a good hitter. Pull him up real quick. Just 21 years old, and a young 21 at that. Just turned 21 3 months ago. In 202 AA plate appearances this year, had swiped 16 bases, was slashing 265, 381, 312. And then over 132 plate appearances at AAA after getting the call to the more advanced level. Surged 336, 432, 575 over that stretch. Had a 239 ISO, a 15.2% strikeout rate with a 12.9% walk. Hit 7 home runs and stole 5 bases. Created around 60% better than average in that smallish sample of plate appearances. Got the call to the show. We'll be more interested in talking about it when he's on slates later in the week. This one goes tough one. 4 corners game for sure. I guess I gotta go Ronaldo, Green, Reds, Braves. The Reds being over the Braves. For 1, you get 9 bats on the Reds. You only get 8 from the Braves. For 2, we're defying Vegas a little bit there, but I think the opportunity is real. Where not that the opportunity doesn't exist for the Braves, but I think the opportunity for the Reds to exceed the Vegas total at least is pretty real against Ronaldo if they catch him finally. Eventually, that luck's going to wear out. I've got the Twins lineup here. So, again, we've got some weather to worry about in this one, but this is what I'm really targeting. I really like the power upside that's showing for the top of the Phillies lineup. Again, Ober is a good pitcher. We've used him. We've avoided him through this season in spots. We've used him in spots. 8,300 on DraftKings, 9,200 on FanDuel. He projects out okay. It's not a bad median. It's just, what does the ceiling look like when the Phillies put a couple runs on top and he's got to claw his way back just to the median with a few additional strikeouts? He is good for depth typically, but we're looking at 18 starts, 100 innings this year. He's given us quality starts in 5 straight, including the complete game. 2 runs against the Athletics, struck out 10. Gave up 2 solo shots, but that was it. 6 1/3 the start before that against that same Athletics team. Struck out 8, gave up just 1 run on 6 hits, including a home run. 9 strikeout game against the Mariners over 6. He gave up just 1. 8 strikeouts against Detroit. 6 strikeouts against the White Sox. That is a stretch of pretty mediocre teams. Bad, some might even say. Twins are definitely the best opponent he's faced in since, let's say, the start of June. June 4th, he faced the Yankees. Arguably these days, if the Yankees are any better than the A's or the Mariners or the White Sox. Certainly haven't been since around then. There's enough talent in Ober to pay off the price. There's enough talent, especially on DraftKings, to put him in consideration for a decent chunk of shares. It's just a pretty threatening Phillies lineup that isn't overly targetable. If it's this version of the lineup, 21.9% strikeout rate, that's including Schwarb's up at the top with his 27.2, and you've got Brandon Marsh lurking down here at 32.2, but both of those hitters can do a lot of damage. So I don't love the spot for Ober, but I get it at price on DraftKings. 92 on FanDuel. Like I said at the beginning of the show, across 150, I would have a little bit. If I'm building 20, I could probably tap dance my way around more than, having more than one or two in 20 lineups, maybe. Not much more than that, I don't think. He'll probably be low owned, but not a great spot. On the other side, I do like Suarez. 8,800, 10.7. 10.7 is a tough price to pay on FanDuel. 8,800 on DraftKings, a lot more interesting. 24.5% strikeout rate on the season, a 2.76 ERA, a 3.03 xFIP, just a 5.7% walk rate. Very good at checking power, keeping the ball on the ground, just a 1.97% home run rate. 6-degree average launch, 5.1% barrel. The xFIP is slightly higher than the ERA, but it's not like it's betraying anything. That's a terrific xFIP at 3.03. It's not the same thing as what I was saying about Ronaldo in the first game, where that is significantly higher. It's still okay. It's below 4, which is all right, but that is a significant difference there. There's a lot in this contact profile that says that this is low, given all the fly ball trajectory and the medium hard hit here. If you flip that against Suarez, you can see it's largely a low trajectory, very, very good at limiting good contact, 36.9% hard hit rate, just 87.5 miles an hour of exit velo. So I believe a lot more in this home run mark being truly low. Even with the limited stuff plus rating, 82.98, I mentioned it for the other guys, so I've got to at least bring it up because it's glaringly low. He's just very, very effective for what he's looking to do with that arsenal. 8,800 is a terrific price for him on DraftKings. Again, you get a somewhat diminished version of the Twins with no Carlos Correa in the lineup. Manny Margot leading off, Ryan Jeffers, Willie Castro. If I told you that was a top 3 before the season started, you would be like, well, that team's a pushover. There's no real concern there. 19.4% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the lineup. That includes a 0 in that average, though. That true average is 21.8%. You got Brooks Lee in there at a very low number over just 58 plate appearances, but you also have Camargo in there at 40 over 5. Among the guys who are in here regularly and are consistent major leaguers up at the top of the lineup, it's a 20.3%, so it's like a 1 in 5 opportunity. Maybe he pushes it up to the 1 in 4 that he's been finding this season. But it's non-threatening here. Byron Buxton is, kind of back to being Byron Buxton. 282, 335, 510 over 278 opportunities now. He's got 11 home runs, a 227 ISO. He's created runs 37% better than average. Pretty phenomenal contact metrics. So definitely a cleanup hitter to worry about. And Castro's been good this season. Jeffers has power at catcher. I'm not saying these guys are not relevant today. We'll talk about them. But I'm saying it's a reasonable path to success for Ranger Suarez, especially at that price. And probably at what ownership that price would render him at. If you just want to take a low-owned opportunity and pay through the nose for it, it's there. Carlos Santana pulled his season together for power. Not all that targetable in terms of strikeouts. Knows how to draw walks, and he's at a good price. So he's a threatening pair of hitters there. And then a bunch of rookies down here, plus Max Kepler. Not the most intimidating bottom third of the lineup. Max is very good. Not having a good season, but he is good. So I think it's a reasonable opportunity for Ranger to find some success. If you're looking at the Twins, Manny Margot's in the leadoff spot because there's a lefty on the mound. He's not much of a hitter. 234, 295 overall for the season. Uh, 234, 295, 335, 339 ex-WOBA. 16.1% strikeouts is reasonable. The reason I'm pulling up Fangraphs, I just want to see the splits. Against lefties, 289, 347, 433. Just a 144 ISO, but a 122 WRC+. plus. He's like a Ref Snyder. You know, he is more talented against a lefty, but this is a very good lefty who's very good at suppressing anything that he might do. So maybe you get a base hit and an opportunity for correlated scoring in a bad spot. It's not a great investment. Ryan Jeffers at catcher, 14 home runs on the season, a 223 ISOs, great 120 WRC+, plus, very strong. There is a strong stretch of run creation so far this season through that group, and nobody's expensive on this team. So for value, I could see getting to maybe some shares. You get some mixed positioning, second base and shortstop eligible Willie Castro for 45 on DraftKings, 3,000 on FanDuel for 4 positions. He's hit 7 home runs and stolen 10 bases this year. He's still got a 125 WRC+, plus, but things are slowly cratering outside of just scoring some runs and getting on base, obviously, setting the table a little bit. I would be just more interested in putting Willie Castro in the leadoff spot regardless of who's on the mound, honestly. For one, he's a switch hitter, so you get the strong side of the platoon. But for two, he's just a better player than Manny Margot. And for what he does, what he's looking to do this season, it's just a better lineup spot than hitting him third. He's capable of doing what you need from him in the 3 spot as well, and it could lead to a productive DFS day. I just think he's more suited for a leadoff role. But he's a capable guy, and 3,000, 4,500, not bad. He's just been in a little bit of a downturn over the last few weeks. Benched him this week in the Dynasty League. Again, Buxton performing tremendously, and honestly, that DraftKings price at just 4,600 not really caught up to it. It's just not the best day to exploit it. Maybe tomorrow. Not sure who's pitching for the Phils tomorrow, but probably a little bit more gettable for power upside. So maybe we look at that. But that's one to remember price-wise and keep an eye on. If it doesn't creep above 5,000, that's a bargain any given slate. And honestly, even against Suarez, you could one-off that if you wanted to. If you had an open outfield spot, 46 to spend, you could do worse. Carlos Santana for 43, 3,000 again, 14 home runs, a 187 ISO, creator runs 14% better than average so far. Low strikeout, high walk. Just is who he is. A reasonable veteran investment if you're stacking Twins. Not really a consideration as a one-off or a strong pull toward the Twins. Brooks Lee has been decent over his 58. He does have a pretty good prospect profile. Dead on league average for run creation, but he's hit 2 home runs, stolen a base. 264, 310, 396 so far. Very cheap in the infield. A lot of development to do still. Heider Camargo at catcher, dead min on both sites. Mix and match guy, especially since you've got Jeffers already in the lineup. I don't think you're going to that spot. Max Kepler, 41, 27, 6 home runs this year, but everything about this profile over 280 from Max is pretty down this year. Striking out a little bit less, but walking less. And then Diego Castillo, not available on DK, dead min price on FanDuel. So you really do have a lot of bargains. Maybe you keep the Twins in mind for just, I need cheap bats with talent. But again, not a very good matchup against Suarez. Castillo is available on FanDuel. This is his debut. Or actually, no, it's not his debut. We're just not pulling stats. That's right. This is 26-year-old Diego A. Castillo. That's probably how he is in graphs, and I just don't have a replace setup for him. He has made 6 plate appearances this year, slashing 200, 333, 200. In 2022, he made 283 plate appearances for the Pirates, and he hit 11 home runs. Not bad power output. 176 ISO, though. Very limited slash line and a 72 WRC+. In 280 AAA plate appearances for the Twins this season, 5 home runs, 7 steals, 272, 379, 404. Just a mix and match kind of a talent. On the Phil side, do we have this lineup yet? Let me see. Rangers, White Sox, Royals, Reds, Twins. Doesn't look like. Ooh, James Paxton, DFA by the Dodgers. Interesting. He'll catch on somewhere probably. Hasn't been that good this year, but I think he'll catch on. So, assuming the Phillies lineup looks roughly like this, you've got some expensive but high quality investments up at the top of the board. I love stacking those 3 players together, and I think there's enough value, especially on DraftKings, like pitching-wise today, that I think it should be easy enough to get there. And probably even including, let's say, JT Realmuto for just 4,500. Bryson Stott's been awful over the last 2 months or so, but 46 is a reasonable price for the talent. Nicky Castellanos, there's a lot down lineup that costs less. So you could probably even get to a 5-man that includes Bohm. Value pitcher from that group of fairly priced $7,000 and $8,000 pitchers. Go 2 of those guys and then a full 5-man from the Phils. I like the opportunity. I really think it's a spot where maybe Bailey Ober gets nailed a little bit. He's given up a 4% home run rate this season, 9.4% barrels, just 36% hard hits, 87 miles an hour of exit velo is fine. 20-degree average launch, it's just very fly ball trajectory and tends to get dinged in some spots. So it's looking a little bit more like that today. Gave up a home run in each of his last 2, but he was effective in both. Only 3 earned runs last time, 1 earned run the start before that, 3 runs total in the game. Went 6 innings in each of those. I read those off before, but I do think there's opportunity for Philadelphia. Schwarb's 15.16 home run pick of the day. He's got 19 on the year. 199 ISO for him. Also a 199 ISO for Trey Turner. That's more Turner-ish than it is Schwarber-like. I expect that ISO to climb for Kyle Schwarber. 11.5% barrels, 55.1% hard hits. Barrels down, hard hits up this year. That should normalize to around last year's numbers. See a bunch of home runs. He's terrific at getting on base, so he's not just a 0 if he doesn't hit a home run. Love Schwarber at the top of the lineup. Turner's a superstar at shortstop, 339, 385, 538 this season. He's created runs 60% better than average. 12 homers, 12 steals. Fantastic 270 plate appearances out of Trey. Harper for 58, 4,000. Honestly, $200 cheap on DraftKings probably. You can make him 100 or 200 more on FanDuel if you wanted. 22 homers at 275 ISO, creating runs 65% better than average. 12.4% barrels, matching up against a guy giving up a 9.4% barrel. Love the opportunity for power for the top 3. All 3 guys above the magic number for home runs. Alec Bohm checking in at a 6.89. He's got a 45.3% hard hit rate. He's got 11 home runs, a 181 ISO, 130 WRC+. Terrific slash line. No reason to believe that Alec Bohm won't be a big part of the party tonight if the Phillies go off. Realmuto, if he's in the lineup, absolute bargain at 2,600 on the FanDuel slate, 4,500 on DraftKings. You do have to go catcher util, and you can't get, well, actually, I guess you could if you're putting Bohm at third, not first, obviously. But you do have to occupy catcher and util if you want both Bryce and Realmuto in the lineup on FanDuel. Pretty good value price on him on DK if he's hitting fifth today. 7 home runs on the season, just a 148 ISO, but still creating runs 3% better than average, and has more upside than this. Has upside for counting stats, home runs, and speed. Stott, again, we're down to 235, 323, 346, just a 91 WRC+. Plus. Does have the 22 stolen bases, but if he was getting on base more reliably, that would be higher at this point. Just 6 home runs, having a little bit of a down season, and it's definitely been a struggle over the last 6 weeks or so. But there's a lot of talent there for the money. Nicky Castellanos hit the most predictable home run in the world on the slate yesterday. Or I guess it was on the afternoon slate. If you know, you know. Barring a major world event, does he provide a good output today? Maybe. He is a good player. He's got 14 home runs on the season, a 168 ISO, 95 WRC plus. Not having a great season. He's been a little bit up and down over the last few years, but when he's on, you get a lot of upside. He does have a 9% barrel rate, 7.16 in the home run model. So definitely not irrelevant late in the lineup for 4,200. Value guy that helps you average down the pricing on everybody else, if nothing else. Brandon Marsh, phenomenal contact option, 8.4% barrel, 48.7% hard hits this year. 9 home runs, 11 steals, pretty good for counting stats, 172 ISO. That honestly could be higher with the contact that he makes. Just very, very good premium contact bat, but a lot of strikeouts, capable of drawing walks, capable of getting involved when he's not hitting home runs. Johan Rojas, mediocre hitter here for a little bit of speed, but doesn't get on base enough to really pay it off DFS-wise. Primarily here to play a hell of a center field. This goes Ranger Suarez, Phillies bats, Bailey Ober, Twins bats. James Sarcone jumping in. No Marsh tonight. Real Muto is in the lineup. Phillies lineup just dropped. Let's see what we got. Hopefully not that much timeline. Let's see. Schwarbs, Turner, Harper, Bohm is intact up at the top. Real Muto. Castellanos moves up a spot. Then Stott hitting 7. Wilson is in the lineup hitting 8, and Rojas hitting 9. Wilson is, what is it? Weston Wilson. That's right. I almost called him Wade Wilson. That's Deadpool. Deadpool versus Wolverine in theaters this Friday. Probably catch it as early as Wednesday, depending on where you live. You guys didn't know I had a big sponsorship with Disney now, huh? We're going to be plugging nothing but Marvel movies going forward. Weston has 18 home runs and 14 stolen bases in 313 plate appearances in AAA this season. He is, to point out, though, 29 years old playing in AAA, almost 30 years old. So bear that in mind. In his major league career, he's made 42 plate appearances. 294, 405, 471. He's been effective. He's hit 2 home runs, scored 7 times, drove in 5, stole 4 bases. He's not going to be popular if you're building a bunch of Philly stacks. He's hitting here. What's his? So 3,200, 2,400. He's a third baseman on FanDuel. That's dumb. First outfield at 3,200 on DK. A playable piece. Nope, skip the game. See what else you guys are talking about. Do you know what pitcher is going to have a big second half? Landon Knack, says Michael Knack. I think GMAC took Landon Knack in our dynasty draft. In the minor league draft because he was still available. Anybody with rookie status is still available in that draft. Pretty sure EMAC named him. So he'd love to hear that. I do think he's a talented enough kid. Trout overrated ass should retire. Won't go on a tangent about him. Back to the slate. You know, Nacho's hitting second? Kenneth, where'd that come from? Oh, that's a change. Who scratched? Did somebody scratch or did they just change the lineup? Or did I fuck up? Yeah, maybe I screwed that lineup up in the initial. Apologies for that. Thanks for pointing that out. I might have just copy-pasted it across and not fixed it. All right, let me do that real quick. Yeah, basically everybody moves down. Weird. All right, so that's your Braves lineup. It is unfortunate that you're going to have a player that's not on the slate hitting second. Maybe I'm not sure if anybody added him yet. It doesn't hamper them in real life, and he is, again, supposed to be a good hitter, so maybe, helps them and he contributes and he keeps the innings alive. But for DFS purposes, it does put a little bit of a hole into the threading of a stack. But definitely Braves still playable, but I do still prefer the Reds a little bit, just on the idea of getting 9 opportunities rather than 8 from underperforming guys. Whatever, I'll worry about it later. I just remember that I have the, let me do that real quick. I'm going to take a second just real quick and do this and fix the projections that are up on the site because I had uploaded the Braves already. I won't do all the ones that have dropped in the meantime. I just want to fix the Braves lineup so that people don't have it wrong because it's listed as confirmed up there. Yeah, right. And we give Nacho his zeros. Hang out for half a second and talk amongst yourselves. I just got to click upload on this. It's probably a good time to bring up our pals over at acemind.io, our optimization and sim partners. Make sure you're checking those guys out. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month over there, assuming that's still working. Have to catch up with those guys. They've got great optimization tools, great sim products, all the major sports, football coming right around the corner. Critical importance for building football lineups. Make sure you're checking those guys out. All right, back to the slate. Site is updated. Avian Assad going for the Cubbies, 7,100, 8,200 across sites, 3.27 ERA, but a 4.36 xFIP underneath, just a 6.3% swinging strike rate, 25.5% CSW, leading to a 21.4% strikeout rate that probably doesn't really align with those numbers. That's a little bit high given that strike throwing ability. He's been okay. He's been effective this season, but he's losing a little bit in terms of giving up some power, 3.25% home runs, a 9.2% barrel rate against is pretty significant. Gave up exactly 2 home runs in each of his last 2 starts, kind of melted down in those. One was back on June 23rd, then he was out for a couple weeks, and then came back on the 13th to face the Cards. Just went 2 1/3 in that one. 2 home runs allowed, 3 earned runs on 7 hits, faced just 15 hitters over the 2 1/3, didn't strike anybody out and walked 2. And now we've had an additional 9 days off, and we're coming back from this one. So I really don't know what kind of quality we're looking like. I really don't know what kind of depth we're looking at with Avian Assad. And he's going up against an effective enough Brewers team that really don't love targeting here. So he's value priced, but he's probably a pretty low consideration from down here on a day where all these guys are priced the same and are better in better opportunities. And Tobias Myers is one of those guys who kind of falls a little bit above his opponent here. For 7,200, he is offset even from the other value guys on the DraftKings slate. It's just bad as they've been overall this season. The Cubs are not a pushover of an opponent in terms of their individual upside, their individual ability to get on base. They do have some guys who have been scoring runs and threading opportunities and sequencing and creating runs. Their power output is mixed. Their run creation ability, if you miss when you're a sequencing and correlated scoring focus team, when one guy in that sequence misses, it kills the whole inning sometimes. So you do limit the offensive opportunity sometimes, and maybe Myers benefits from that, but it's not the best matchup to throw him into. And he's a fairly low strikeout pitcher who does give up a little bit of power as well. So as much as he is on the board by that price offset a little bit, I still prefer most of the pitchers that are ranked around him on that pitching board, both in terms of upside and price. If I'm looking at bats in this one, I probably prefer the Brewers to the Cubs. For one, the away team. There's a little bit of appeal there. I just think they're the better of these two squads. WRC Plus supports that pretty strongly with 8 of 9 hitters in the Brewers lineup, although that does include just 40 plate appearances from Garrett Mitchell. Everybody is a positive run creator up there. Just a handful of guys that are above average, and then some significantly below average guys in the projected version of the Cubs lineup. Let's see. We don't have these yet. But again, I do like a lot of these Cubs hitters as individuals. And then I think some of them, like Dansby Swanson late in the lineup, has been dramatically underperforming his talent level. And they've got interesting on-base guys like Mike Tauchman. Ian Happ is a very good on-base option with some power upside, some run creation upside. I don't know how many times I would get to Tobias Myers at that price. That's the consideration there. But anyway, starting with the Brewers side of things, as the preferred stack. Bryce Turang up top, 44.29. Very, very good pricing for a guy with 30 stolen bases, a 334 on base. Table setter ahead of bats like William Contreras, Christian Yelich, Willy Adames. Gives you a lot of opportunity to circle the bases once you've gotten on. He's done that pretty effectively this year. His creator runs 3% better than average, but just a really good opportunity to become a fantastic table setter given his skill set up at the top. So like the spot, like the positioning, like the price for the player. Not a bad DFS option. Contreras for 51.31. Probably a little bit better of a bargain on the FanDuel slate where you don't need catchers, but treat him like the first baseman if you want to ignore Rhys Hoskins and his power upside. It's easy enough to do, or you go catcher, first base util with the two of them. On DraftKings for 51, that's a very effective price for a catcher who hits second basically every day. He's got 11 home runs, a 121 WRC plus while slashing 284, 350, 434. Gets on base a ton, drives the ball like crazy, 8.8% barrels, 48.7% hard hits this year, 9.4% and 48.4% last year. He's an extremely good bat for the position. Christian Yelich at 56.39, not overpriced in my mind. 11 home runs, 21 steals this year, slashing 320, 405, 511, 192 ISO. You can make a fairly strong argument that he's actually underpriced by a couple $100 on DraftKings. Creating runs 57% better than average. This is superstar caliber performance from a former MVP. He's never been bad. He just had the reputation that he had kind of fallen apart, and mostly based on that he didn't really hit home runs all that much anymore. But he's always driven the ball. We've looked at this a bunch of times. You guys know this. Not breaking any new ground. But for the people who haven't been here before, Christian Yelich has always been really, really good. 4,300, 3,200 for shortstop for Willy Adames. Not a bad opportunity. Guy who makes pretty good contact, 10.5% barrels and 40% hard hits this year with consistently double-digit barrels and decent to good contact over the last couple of seasons. That's a good price for a shortstop that is not far off the mark as compared to the Bobby Witts of the world, the Trey Turners of the world. Adames is not on that level. He's a solid step down, but a lot of the time when we're talking about shortstop, we'll land on these mixed options that are good defenders, okay hitters, but not great DFS plays, where Adames gives you a little bit more than that. So he's not one of those guys that I'm like, I'd probably rather just have a star at shortstop. If I'm stacking Brewers, I can definitely include him, and you get a decent discount for him and these numbers compared to the Trey Turners of the world at their prices for their numbers. So I don't dislike Adames at all. Sal Frelick for 34.27, slashing 275, 347, 350, creating runs 2% better than average, 14 steals, mostly a contact on base correlated scoring focused player. Would probably be hitting leadoff on this team if there wasn't such a thing as a Bryce Turang. Relegated to the 5 spot in this version of the lineup. Not an ideal spot in a lineup for a hitter like that, outside of the idea that if this guy clears the bases of these guys, maybe Frelick resets it for these guys, which is kind of what they're looking to do with this version of the lineup. Hoskins for just 42.28 is still on my list of playable Brewers. 205 ISO, 15 home runs on the season, a 12.4% barrel rate. That's all I really care about from Rhys Hoskins. Love the pricing on a player who I have a decent amount of faith in the power and the home runs being real and consistently arriving through the second half. Garrett Mitchell, mix and match piece, 31.25 across sites. Pretty cheap, but just an average outfielder, just another outfielder. 37.27 for Joey Ortiz. The numbers have declined a little bit, but the on-base is still very, very strong at 361. Creating runs 23% better than average. Not a terrible opportunity to just grab him and wrap him back around to the top of the lineup as a cheap third base option. He's playable that way. And then Jackson Chourio, tons and tons of talent, 3,600, 2,600. Had a very nice surge over the most of June, let's say. Up to 10 home runs and 12 steals, but just a 97 WRC plus, just a 151 ISO. A lot of growth still to come from that player, but there's a lot of ceiling as well for a cheap, cheap price. If you're considering the Cubs, you do get a lot of it's tough to call them bargains when they're not necessarily completely performing up to snuff, but a couple of good value plays in there at least. 41.28 across sites for Nico. He does have second and shortstop eligibility on FanDuel. He's getting on at a 338 clip, 14 stolen bases, but he's dead at league average for run creation in what should be a more productive lineup spot with the hitters that follow him. So not sure exactly what it is, but he's got to get something going a little bit more to be truly valuable in that spot outside of just a bolt-on part. Michael Busch definitely gives you more than that. 4,000 on DraftKings, 2,900 on FanDuel, where he's very interesting because he's got second base eligibility. I like that quite a bit. 12 home runs, 195 ISO, 131 WRC+. He's a player I make sure to include because of that second base eligibility if I'm stacking Cubs on FanDuel. On DraftKings at first base, it isn't a positional blocker in this version of the Cubs lineup. It's not a big deal, and he's cheap. It's just not quite the same value, I don't think, positionally compared to a lot of other first base opportunities on the slate. And let's say you wanted to stack like, Cubs, Phillies. You're not getting him instead of Bryce Harper more often than not. But a decent power bat, 12 home runs, and 11.6% barrels, okay hard hit rate. Seiya Suzuki is phenomenal for contact, 11.8% barrels, 49.5% hard hits. Last year, very similar numbers. 13 home runs, 10 stolen bases over 327 opportunities, a 126 WRC plus with a 203 ISO. I imagine there's a lot of doubles in there. $14 doubles on the season to go with the 13 home runs. And 3 triples. Very, very solid bat for a pretty good price. Handful of strikeouts for sure, 27.5%. There are some aggressive swing and miss opportunities and some upside for strikeouts for Tobias Myers, but he's only around a 1 in 5 strikeout rate, 21.5% for the season. Ian Happ for 4,300, 3,300 across sites in the outfield, has 15 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a 210 ISO, 125 WRC+. It's a player we've always liked. Double-digit barrels, 43.7% hard hits this year. Maintaining a reasonably close hard hit profile, but up a couple of points compared to the last couple seasons, and more barrels. Happ's hitting for a little bit more power this year while still getting on base at a very good clip. He's an interesting player in the heart of the lineup. Chris Morel, just a power bat, 9.12 in the home run model. He's got 18 on the season, 7 stolen bases as well, but just a 179 ISO. Needs to be more consistent, needs to deliver more than just home runs, but makes very, very good contact for a cheap price. Taubman's an on-base machine, 346 on base. He could do better than that over a course of regular plate appearances. 107 WRC plus on the season. A little bit of ability to drive the ball. Mix and match player, just another outfielder overall, though. Dansby, again, just a bad season. 210, 284, 343, a 78 WRC plus. A player I still believe in, but it's getting harder and harder. What I'm holding down faith in is the reasonably good contact profile. But strikeouts are up a little bit, walks are down, numbers are down across the board. It's getting concerning. Miguel Amaya, Pete Crow Armstrong, both pretty skippable in the last spots. Amaya, not much of a hitter at the catcher spot. Crow Armstrong, just some stolen base upside, but below sub Mendoza and a 238 on base is not going to get it done as a reliable DFS option, and there's not a ton of individual upside. Brewers bats, Cubs bats, value darts at pitcher if you want them. I guess projection-wise, it's Myers over Assad. So it's probably, I would say it's probably just Myers between the two pitchers. But they're just value darts, and I don't know how much I would get to them. Yeah, Trey, that Snell spot is just, yeah, and Jake is pointing it out as well. That is a very, very cheap price for Blake Snell, especially when we're getting full innings. I have no concerns. It might not work out, but that's baked into the price. Houck and Snell pitching combo for Jake. That's pretty solid. Was there a discount on Houck on DK? I think there was, right? Yeah, 85. Forget it. Again, Hayden Birdsong just struck out 12 yesterday at Coors Field. There's plenty of opportunity, even if he doesn't rack up a ton of strikeouts like that. Houck could give you 8 very solid innings of run suppression in Coors Field. So for 85 there, and then pairing him with Blake Snell for 75. That's why I was saying, like, there is a really strong reason to just grab a pool of these guys, leave out the 3 most highly priced pitchers who will all be popular in their spots, and just get a little solid mix across 1 or 2 of your crunches. Get a little solid mix of just this group of pitchers in combination with one another. And I think that's a really strong core of lineups. And then you go back, or you do it before, and you build out more lineups with the full, with that full list of pitchers, excluding the dregs at the bottom. But I think there's a ton of value with those opportunities. None of it, literally none of it, coming from this game. 76 for Michael Lorenzen, probably your best spot in this one, pitching wise. He's got a 17.4% strikeout rate over 16 starts, 92 innings. 3.52 ERA makes him look okay, but a 4.99 xFIP is pretty revelatory. He's got an 11.8% walk rate this season, just 8.7% swinging, 25.3% CSW, giving up a 3.49% home run on a significant barrel rate, fairly fly ball trajectory, just under 40% hard hits. Exit velo is not bad, but this is not a good pitcher outside of every now and then he breaks off a good start. 5 innings last time out, gave up 5 earned runs on 5 hits, struck out 3, walked 4 against the Angels of all teams. Struck out 4, walked 5 against the Rays. Only gave up 0 earned runs and 1 hit in that one over 5 innings. No quality start in his last 4 attempts. 2 of them he just fell short. There was that Rays start and then one against Milwaukee where he went 5, gave up just 2 earned runs, struck out 5, but came out after 5. The other 2 games, he gave up 5 earned runs over 5 innings. That was against Baltimore and against the Angels. 3 strikeouts and 4 walks in both of those games. Not a good pitcher. There's definitely matchup-based appeal going up against a White Sox lineup with a 26.6% strikeout rate for the confirmed version of the lineup, or for the projected version, rather. Probably got the confirmed on this one. Yeah, we do. Ooh, leadoff Lubob today. Like that. And we got the Rangers on the other side. Hit the like and the subscribe and all those good things. If you haven't checked out the site, it is rotoscouts.com. If you haven't jumped into our Discord, well, I don't know what you're waiting for, but I'll drop a link in there. Little link to Discord coming up. Stream sucks in the Hamptons in case anybody's trying to listen to Terry out here. Sounds like Mama's having a nice little week out in the Hamptons. Is it just the internet out there that you're saying sucks? Or at the house you're staying at or whatever? That's weird. What was your comment before that I wanted to address? Oh, the Trout overrated thing. Yeah, you almost got me sidetracked with that before, but I won't fall for it. I knew you'd said something. Arch Stanton in the chat. There you go. We'll promo another movie. Twisters, in theaters now. Glenn Powell, an actress whose name I can't remember. Sidequel? Sequel? Not a direct sequel? Requel? Reboot? Prequel? Whatever the hell it is. It's definitely not a prequel. But it's a new Twister for a new generation. We'll say it that way. In theaters now. Looks like a big blockbuster. I was betting heavy on it. Not actually betting, but talking quite a bit about how I thought it would be the movie this year that rescues the box office, running up ahead of Deadpool and Wolverine, as was pointed out. It's going to run directly into Wolverine box office-wise. But we did see last summer the whole Barbenheimer thing do pretty well, so maybe this is a twist pool, combo weekend for a lot of people. I might actually do it that way when Deadpool comes out later in the week. But yes, I definitely want to see Twisters and definitely want to check it out in theaters. I almost went over the weekend, but just didn't work out time-wise. So anyway, with both of these lineups in, we'll take a look up and down. Eric Fede, I don't think there's all that much reason to talk about either. 111 innings, 21.6% strikeouts. His numbers are better, 2.99 ERA, a 3.84 xFIP. But again, the Rangers showing the second highest overall run total, pushing almost up to a 5-run overall total. And Fede just, I didn't have a lot of belief in the numbers earlier in the season. I continue to not have a lot of belief in them. And they're not overly strong as far as what we need DFS-wise. He's just pitched clean innings this season. 92.56 by Stuff Plus if we're looking for a reckoning as far as what the arsenal looks like. 12.1 degree average launch isn't significantly low, 7% barrels. Reasonably effective at limiting premium contact, so maybe it's a deceptively not incredible day to roster Rangers bats. I'll give him that much. But the days where Fede goes out, strikes out 15 and wins the slate, obviously that's a huge number. Don't know where that one came from. Let's say he strikes out 9 and wins the slate, pretty few and far between. Didn't want to sidetrack you. Calling one of the best players of his generation underrated. Criminal to say that about Mike Trout, sir. He gets hurt. He's missed games from injuries. It's a shame. But he is not overrated. We'll look at the numbers on another show. So looking at that White Sox lineup, getting Lou Bob in the leadoff spot is at least kind of interesting, but it's weird because now it relegates Tommy Pham to the 3 spot. You also don't have Eloy Jimenez in the lineup now that I'm looking at the confirmed version. I really don't see all that much need, even against Michael Lorenzen, to consider a White Sox team that is still pulling below a 4-run total. But if you're one-offing a player from this lineup, easily it's Lou Bob for 5,000, 3,300. He's got 11 home runs and 11 steals, a 244 ISO, 114 WRC+. Ton of time missed this season, just 191 plate appearances, but phenomenal player. Aggressive Goose, you don't remember that from last year? Barbenheimer from the box office? That was a big thing. A lot of couples and dates and everything went out to do both movies back to back. All of that. I saw that Barbie movie. It was good. Fun, commercial parody. A little unexpected Will Ferrell action in it. He was good in it. Margot Robbie, obviously, for one, gorgeous. I think it's still okay to say that. Terrific actor. Very good in the movie. Perfectly cast. It was a little bit strange, though. It wasn't, to me anyway, the story that they told, it wasn't actually, she wasn't necessarily the protagonist of the story. So it was kind of interesting. I guess by the definition, maybe she was, because the action somewhat revolved around her, but it pivots halfway through the movie. But it was good. Cute movie. Well done. But I know he should just... Yeah, I wouldn't argue with Trout just DHing at this point of his career, especially if it helps him stay healthy. No arguments here. But I wouldn't say that makes him overrated. Aggressive Goose. Ken was the best thing about the movie by far. You're fitting right into the patriarchy, Aggressive Goose, by saying that. That's exactly what they want you to say. No, Gosling was obviously phenomenal as Ken. Yeah, that was a great part of the movie. But I did think overall it was a good movie. So looking down the rest of that White Sox lineup, it's really highly skippable. Benintendi's been awful this season. He's paid to hit for average and get on base. He's doing neither. Totally skippable piece in that lineup. Tommy Pham for 4,000, 2,800, slashing 273, 41, 377. Should probably continue leading off, but they're experimenting with him in the 3 spot. He's capable of delivering what you need from there. He does have the ability to hit for average, hit for a little bit of power, but a solidly, medium level outfielder on any given slate. Andrew Vaughn for 36, 28, got up to 11 home runs, a 149 ISO. A little bit of a surge over late May into June, or maybe it was a couple weeks later than that, but overall not an incredibly appealing player. He is a cheap first baseman, but really only in use if you're stacking White Sox. Gavin Sheets with multi-position eligibility on both sides for 33-26 has 7 home runs and not much else this season. Paul DeJong has 16 home runs and not much else this season, but he's probably more playable than Sheets. Third and shortstop eligibility now on DraftKings makes him a little bit interesting as far as being able to flex him around another high-quality shortstop option. I'd probably rather have DeJong at third base so that I can get to one of the high-level shortstops. Nicky Lopez, 25-23 across sites, just a back control guy, paid to hit for average and be a reasonable infielder and not really doing the average part, not getting on base. 68 WRC plus for him this season. Brooks Baldwin, the rookie, continues to be very, very cheap. He's 1 for 10 so far. Congratulations on your first and only base hit so far in the major leagues. Corey Lee, 9 home runs, 5 stolen bases. Actually, probably their third most interesting hitter. Just happens to be batting 9th. Cheap price at catcher. Not a great option. The Rangers, much more appealing with a fairly high run total and a lot more talent in their lineup. Marcus Semien and Corey Seager off the top of the lineup, both coming in at a discount now. 47, 5,000 on DraftKings, 34, 37 on FanDuel. Neither guy performing all the way up to par. Seager's been the better of the two, but any given slate upside is extreme for those two players, especially for the positions they fill. Semien with a just 241, 314, 391 down to a 98 WRC plus, only a 150 ISO. 13 home runs is okay, but we expect more power than that. But as I've highlighted a bunch of times, nothing about the left side of the board here looks any different than what he's done over the past few years. So along with Matt Olson, who I think I said it about before, Marcus Semien firmly on the list of players who have the ability to just turn it on like that and deliver a monster second half based on the fact that everything over here is similar to how it's been. Seager, with a little bit of diminished quality, still has 18 home runs, a 204 ISO, 127 WRC+. Probably doesn't warrant the big discount that he's gotten. Less significant on FanDuel at 37 than it is at 5,000 on DK. Premium contact is right around where it's supposed to be. The power output has been good, over 371 opportunities. Obviously a major run creator. Pretty good considering the price offset, where there is really no talent offset between him and the other superstar shortstops. Josh Smith for 41-31, delivering a lot. 10 home runs, a 169 ISO, 138 WRC plus so far. Triple slash has been fantastic. We'll see how he can hold it up. As we looked at the other day, the X stats are well behind any of the production that he's shown. I expect that the power output will probably come down. The average will probably come down around that. But I do think even if the average comes down a little bit over the next 2 months or so, I think as long as he's getting regular opportunities, we probably do still have a little bit of on base and correlated scoring upside. And he could defy the odds, defy the X stats, and continue to deliver along the lines of what he's done this year. So very much in play for 41-31. If they had raised his price on the production, it would be a different story, but they haven't. So there's no reason to skip him and just say like, oh, he's overperforming, I can't go there, because he's at the price for what he, arguably was underperforming or was. So no real reason to skip him. Wyatt Langford for 4,000, 3,000, has 5 home runs, 8 steals. Mediocre slash line, just a 129 ISO, 92 WRC plus. Interesting little 41.3% hard hit rate. Doesn't really strike out that bad over his rookie year, drawing some walks. Definitely, second half upside for him, I think is pretty significant. He was starting to come on a little bit at the end of the first half. Probably a little bit underpriced for what the ceiling looks like on any given slate, but more along the lines right now, given what we've seen so far, is just another outfielder. Adolis Garcia is definitely underpriced for his talent, 4,400, 3,200. He's probably more correctly priced for the current year output at 207, 274, 395, just an 84 WRC plus, just a 188 ISO. We're off the mark in a lot of those things. We're off the mark a little bit compared to where he was last year for power, but right around this, or for premium contact, but right around the same level as 2 years ago. Strikeouts have come down by a point, but walks are also down. It's part of the limited on base. But he's just run into some mediocre luck, I'm sure, with where some of those balls are landing. Yeah, a 238 BABIP. Last year was 280, and he slashed 245, 328, 508. If he was giving us just that difference, we'd be talking about him having a better year. Granted, that also came with a 263 ISO, 39 home runs. But if we're saying that the contact looks like it did 2 years ago, that's fine. In that season, he had a 207 ISO, 250, 300, 456. The BABIP was 309. So maybe we get a bounce back up to the 280 range in terms of the BABIP, a little bit more hard hit through the end of the season. That season, he hit 27 home runs. So again, we're not far off the mark with Adolis Garcia. And I think we're getting a big discount on the player. I know for sure we're getting a big discount on Nathaniel Lowe for 3,400 on DK, 2,800 on FanDuel as well. Even if we're just going by what he's doing right now. 313 plate appearances, 7 home runs, just a 117 ISO. Not ideal for power output, but we've seen him hit the ball a lot harder in seasons past. We saw 2 years ago he hit 27 home runs. He had, I think, mid-teens output last year. And he's hit 7. That's not nothing in 313 chances. It's just we've lost a little tiny bit of barrel, a little tiny bit of hard hit compared to the last couple of seasons. But he's getting on base a lot. 348 on base is very good. He's 8 points above average for run creation. He's a very involved hitter. He's a lefty bat going up against a very mediocre righty. And he comes at a very good price in a killer spot in this lineup. I like the upside with Lowe. Jonah Heim for 32-27, a little bit of pop from the catcher spot, 9 home runs, but just a 119 ISO. No consistency at all. Justin Foscue for 21-2,000. You're not skipping Marcus Semien at second base all that often to go to Foscue in the 8th spot. Leonid Taveras, a mix and match outfielder, 6 homers, 12 steals, but just a 79 WRC plus over 342 chances. Rangers bats all day over everything else. If I had to roster a pitcher, I guess it's Lorenzen, just on the matchup. Fede actually projects out slightly better on DraftKings, slightly worse on FanDuel. Both pitchers are low end today. I wouldn't really consider them all that strongly in the mix. I just like everything above them a lot better for very similar prices or better prices. If you're rostering White Sox, probably not the best idea, but maybe some lube up. D-backs and the Royals. Let's see if we got the Royals in. We do. Adam Frazier continuing to lead off. Now I want to see, since we're talking about it so much. In typical 10 games, 39 plate appearances in the leadoff spot for Frazier. We are at where'd it go? 200, 263, 314, a 114 ISO, a 61 WRC plus. That's a great job. Striking out 20.5% and walking 5.1%. Again, very, very small sample of plate appearances, but pretty much directly in line with what he's done over the full 197 this season. Pretty much directly in line with what he did over 455 last year. He was actually hitting for a little bit better average, getting on base around the same level. Year before that, even better, around the same average and the same similar 301 on base. Has not been a positive run creator in any of these last two seasons in which he made more than 1,000 plate appearances. And he's well below average this year over another nearly 200. I think it's safe to say that Adam Frazier is not all that good and is definitely not a good leadoff option. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but they should probably just, if they're going to continue using Adam Frazier, just move Michael Garcia back to the leadoff spot. If you're not going to improve the position and move him out, give the better of these two players more opportunities. Like, it's just dumb to do it this way. Which is after me calling all season long for Michael Garcia to get moved out of that leadoff spot. Hell, put Sal in the leadoff spot. 343 on base. Give it to Bobby Witt. I know you want Bobby Witt hitting second, but go Witt leadoff, Vinny, Sal, Massey, some combination of those guys, 2 through 4. You're not damaging your lineup by doing that. I promise. It's just weird what they're doing with the leadoff role. Anyway, they're facing Gilbert Diaz. 1.50 ERA, but a 4.35 xFIP. Just 15.6% strikeouts in his 2 starts, 12 innings. This is, again, I was trying to figure out when I was talking about him at the top of the show why he was priced at 9,400 on FanDuel against the Royals today. And I don't think it's a case of me missing anything. I think he's just overpriced based on 12 clean innings. Again, 1 earned run in each of those starts. Faced the Braves, faced the Blue Jays. Struck out 5 Braves, just 2 Blue Jays. Pretty appropriate in those. The Braves hit a home run. The Blue Jays did not. 4 hits apiece. He was good, but, I mean, there's nothing in here that says that's going to continue. He did have a 30.8% strikeout rate over 4 AAA starts, 22 innings. That came with a 9.9% walk rate. In Double-A, over 11 starts, 54 innings, he had a 34.2% strikeout rate, but a 12.9% walk rate. That's all this year. Had a 4.33 ERA, but a 3.37 xFIP in those Double-A opportunities, 3.27 and 4.08 in the Triple-A sample. I just have a lot of questions about it at 8,000 on DK, and I just think it's off the board at 94 on FanDuel. Maybe he finds success, but I've avoided these Royals, even this version of the Royals lineup, with only 3 guys performing above average for run creation this season. We've avoided these Royals enough with better pitchers than this, or at least more proven pitchers, that I don't think we need to go here with tons and tons of other values on the board. Raggins on his side looks like top pitcher of the day to me. 29.6% strikeout rate on the season, a 3.16 ERA with a 3.17 xFIP, no difference between those. Fantastic 15.2% swinging strike rate, 29.6% CSW. Has been terrific at limiting premium contact and home run power. Despite a little bit of fly ball upside, there's nothing wrong with anything in this contact profile. Stuff Plus has him well above average for the arsenal. He costs just $9,000 on DraftKings, $10,900 on FanDuel. You're paying full freight over there, but very, very worth it. You do have a low strikeout opponent in the Diamondbacks here. They've been fairly good against lefties, but there are lefties and there are lefties, and Ragans is in the latter group. He is a very, very good pitcher. So I'm looking more toward Cole Ragans and don't really mind the opponent. I think he's got a great path toward the top start of the day. If I'm rostering Diamondbacks bats against, which is not a terrible idea, if you build a big wall of Cole Ragans, you should definitely have a little bit of a hedge position of Diamondbacks. And even if you wanted to just call it a low-owned angle into the slate, say you're playing 5 lineups and you decide, I'm going to fade Cole Ragans across all 5 of those lineups, I would throw Diamondbacks bats into at least one of them. Probably you get a little thin on 2, but they're very, very cheap, so you gain some upside from that. Ketel Marte off the top, 55-37 across sites. Phenomenal season at second base so far from him this year. 9.9% barrels, 52% hard hits. Both of those marks well up from last year. Maintaining a very low strikeout rate, good walk rate, 289, 360, 505. Creator runs 38% better than average. He's hit 19 home runs. Killer second base option who I wouldn't say he's underpriced, but I wouldn't argue if either side had him a couple $100 higher. Gabriel Moreno for 36.27. Nice value at catcher if nothing else. 252, 338, 374. That slash line has improved. He's gone up to a 103 WRC plus. Pulling together an okay season. Hasn't hit for a ton of power yet. Just 4 home runs, a 122 ISO. But he's making pretty good contact. 6.5% barrels isn't great, but it's up from 4.8 last year. 40.5% hard hits is definitely up from where it was several weeks ago. For the price and the spot in the lineup, it's not a bad catcher option if you're already considering Diamondbacks. It is not a good reason to go to the Diamondbacks. Probably not the best one-off in the world. Outside of just really low ownership and a good lineup spot for a cheap price at catcher. Lourdes Gurriel for 42.28. 13 home runs on the season, or an okay average, but a bad on base, an okay slug, but a bad ISO. 95 WRC plus. Hasn't really put it together, but he's not all that far off the mark from being like, a couple points in each of those categories, and it would be an okay Lourdes Gurriel season. I do think he's cheap for the upside. 52.36 for Christian Walker, 22 home runs, 225 ISO, 129 WRC plus. Tons of power at first base. Love Christian Walker on any given slate. If I'm going to Diamondbacks against Cole Ragans, I am not leaving Christian Walker on the table. Randall Grichuk, 33.24, very cheap. Had a good 171 plate appearances. He's just another outfielder, though. 118 WRC plus is good. No real power output, no steals. 284, 339, 439. He is what he is. Junior Suarez, kind of a surge recently. He's up to 11 home runs. I think he hit 4 in the last handful of games, like before and after the All-Star break. Long way to go to quality. Typically a better second half player. I don't really have a ton of belief in first half, second half, but if you show it enough seasons in a row, maybe it becomes true. He's very, very cheap for the ceiling. This is a guy who's hit 30 home runs. Did he do it last year? No, just 22 last year. 31 2 years ago. Been a pretty consistent power hitter over time. Corbin Carroll's also kind of surged. He hit a handful of home runs in his last few games as well. He's up to 6, 19 stolen bases, 211, 299, 339. A lot of distance between him and quality as well. 47, 3,000. Very discounted for last year's Corbin Carroll. For this year's Corbin Carroll, you could say that those prices are kind of high. Kevin Newman, Alec Thomas, mix and match parts at best at the bottom of the lineup. So these Royals, again, Adam Frazier is very, very skippable outside of just, correlated scoring potential with these guys. But you have to actually get on base to pay that off, and he has not been good at doing that. Bobby Witt's a superstar shortstop. He's the guy I've been using as the example over the course of the show for what you want out of that role. 337, 382, 575 with a 239 ISO. He's created a run 61% better than average. 17 homers, 22 stolen bases. Absolutely fantastic season. You're paying a premium. There's a lot of good shortstops on the slate. We've got Trey, we've got Ellie, we've got Seager at a lower price. We've got Witt. A lot of ways to go with that position, but he is easily in one of the lead spots for shares. 48.31 for Vinny is a nice discount by comparison to some of the other guys. Well, actually, no. That's just a fair price for this player. I was going to say to some of the other guys in the lineup, but everybody in this lineup outside of Witt is pretty cheap. But Vinny is a good player at those prices. He's hit 11 home runs, 170 ISO, down to a 97 WRC+. Plus. Needs to start delivering on some of that quality that I've talked about throughout the entire season and into last year. But to do it, I keep saying one more time, but it's probably going to be today and then another 65 times throughout the rest of the season. But if you continue doing this with the low strikeout, reasonably good walk rate, and combined with a very good ability to actually strike the baseball with the bat, you will have good numbers eventually. It just will work out. So love the upside any given slate for Vinny, and I think he comes at a very good price for his talent. 47.34 for Sal across sites. Continues to have hilarious same position catcher and first base eligibility on FanDuel. Just a catcher on DK where you could actually use the first base eligibility. 283, 43, 469. He's got a 121 WRC+. Plus. He's hit 17 home runs. Terrific catcher option, any given slate. Michael Massey, another very low strikeout, low walk option on this team. 8 home runs and 166 plate appearances from the left side, a 210 ISO. Compelling lefty bat against a kind of unknown commodity on the mound, let's say. Hunter Renfroe, mix and match part with a little bit of power potential. 160 ISO and 8 home runs is far off the mark from expectation for who he used to be. But there's any given slate upside if you want to pull the trigger at the very cheap prices. Drew Waters, Michael Garcia, and Kyle Isbell. Between the three, Garcia easily the most talented. That said, the results have been pretty mixed. 6 home runs, 23 steals is good for steals. Mediocre for power, over 424 plate appearances. Just a 113 ISO and a 75 WRC+. Plus. But a decent ceiling at a very low price, second or third base eligible on both sites. Isbell and Waters are pretty skippable late in the lineup. Isbell does have 7 homers and 6 steals, but pretty inconsistent and terrible spot in the lineup for a cheap price. Cole Ragans, Royals bats, Diamondbacks bats. I'm skipping Gilbert Diaz at these prices. If you're going to play him, it's on DK for 8. I can't imagine him getting there at that price. That feels really high on FanDuel. The Coors Field game, again, I do think that Tanner Houck is oddly worth considering in this one. No, this is the Red Sox. I don't know how many of us, definitely not me yesterday with Birdsong, but I don't know how many times we've actually succeeded in before the slate identifying, hey, that one's going to work out today at Coors. And maybe we fail in trying to do that today. We haven't really tried all that many times to pick off pitchers at Coors Field this year, but we've seen a lot of guys happen to work out. Not that there's anything overly predictive about that, but it is a pretty weak Rockies team. Tanner Houck has been exceptional this year. He's very good at keeping the ball on the ground, which is pretty key in Coors Field to begin with. He's got good strikeout stuff. Not great strikeout stuff, but good enough to find a few additional against this Rockies squad. 10-2 on FanDuel. You're not really getting any kind of Coors Field discount there. I guess you could argue if this game was being played in Fenway, maybe he'd be 10-5, 10-7. So maybe it's a slight discount. Where you're getting an extreme discount on his talent is 8,500 on DraftKings. We mentioned him just before when we were looking at the pitching board and some potential combinations, but that is a killer option. And he's got enough to succeed here. Even with the Rockies at a mid-4 run total, I really don't have any issues throwing some darts at that. And if he's under-owned, it's not bad. 2.54 ERA at 3.13 xFIP, 23.5% strikeout rate, 5.5% walks. 10.2% swinging is effective enough, and a 30.5% CSW. Again, a very low average launch at 3.9 degrees, just a 1.05% home run rate. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal. Not quite the same thing for Mr. Gomber on the other side. 4.61 ERA, a 4.43 xFIP, just a 16.1% strikeout rate. More than 20 points below average for by Stuff Plus measurements. 9.8% barrels allowed, leading to a 4.32% home run rate against. Red Sox, by far the highest run total on the board at 5.63. Almost a full run higher than everybody else. Definitely looking like a good spot to grab some Red Sox bats, and probably a day where you're going to forgo your Austin Gomber shares. 5,000 on DraftKings, 6,800 on FanDuel. Pretty hard no there. I mean, as a complete just free square value dart, reasonably talented hitter price at 5,000. How many times has he actually gotten there? He faced the Royals in a home start. The start before last. He went 7 innings. He struck out just 3, gave up a homer, but just the 1 earned run, 6 hits. Against Milwaukee, the start before, struck out 3, gave up 4 earned runs on 9 hits in a home start. Dodgers, 4 earned runs at home. Bunch of road starts on the ledger this year. I mean, you were like desperately holding on to the faith that he can replicate that start against the Royals here, against a probably better Red Sox lineup. If he does that for 5,000, you're off and running on DraftKings, but I have zero faith that he's going to go out and do that to this Red Sox squad. So for me, it's a pretty hard no on Gomber, but he is very, very cheap. Houck is the appealing part. And then the Red Sox bats. Jarren Duran getting the leadoff spot. By the way, we're not really worried about the lefty-lefty with Gomber. Again, there's lefties, and Gomber's in the first half of that. Jarren Duran for 61.42. Those are extreme prices, I'll say that. He's earned them at this point for a Coors game. 12 home runs, 22 steals at 209 ISO, 131 WRC plus. Also a ton of doubles and triples in there. He's been fantastic this year. Against lefties. 264, 338, 341, a .078 ISO, and a 91 WRC plus. He is still maintaining an okay average and getting on base, which is all he really needs to do to find enough success. It's just, if you're looking at him more for correlated scoring, does that success necessarily pay off a $61,000, $4,200 price tag when even on his own team, there are some significant bargains considering the conditions? Rob Refsnyder for 44.31. We know about his success against lefties, especially mediocre soft tossing type lefties like this one. He's having a good year, over 195 plate appearances by and large as a platoon player. Those are very cheap prices, and he hits the ball fairly hard. 9.8% barrels, 44.3% hard hits so far this year. Last year, mediocre, but the year before that, 10.9 and 44.5. How many plate appearances was that? That was over 177. This year was a lot like 2 years ago. 2022 is a lot like what he's done so far this year. Those are very similar numbers. Productive player. Career journeyman, utility man, platoon kind of a player, but this is the ideal spot to play Rob Refsnyder. I do think he'll be very popular at those numbers with that level of pricing. Talent-wise, he's below just another outfielder, but opportunity-wise, DFS-wise, it looks like a good day outside of a lot of popularity. Connor Wong for 4,400 should be the most popular catcher on DraftKings, should be very popular on FanDuel for 34. 8 home runs, 5 steals, but a terrific slash line, 126 WRC plus. Hits right-handed, definitely a compelling bat, 6.99 in the home run model, and some sneaky power upside based on his premium contact over the past couple of seasons. I do think Wong has any given slate, multi-home run upside. Rafi Devers, even lefty, don't care about it at all against Gomber. 23 home runs, 292 ISO, 153 WRC plus. Very expensive, very worth paying for at Coors Field. Tyler O'Neill, probably going to be the most popular hitter on the entire slate on both sites. 18 home runs, 251 ISO, 133 WRC plus, and reasonably priced up on FanDuel at 41. Not as much on DK. It's 57. He's been 55, 56, somewhere in that territory a lot this year. So not a big tax on O'Neill shares. He'll be very popular over there. Yoshida, 42.32, back down to value pricing for another very good hitter. Numbers are diminished over 200 plate appearances this year, but he was really good last year. 95 WRC plus with the ability to drive the ball. I definitely would consider some Yoshida shares. He's got the capability to get involved, even if we're not talking about home runs. Coors Field's great for doubles. It's great for triples. It's great for extra base hits and run creation. So I like the opportunity there. I really like Romy Gonzalez for 4,000 and for 2,900 with 4 position eligibility on FanDuel. He hits the ball very hard so far, 43.3% hard hits this year, 42.4% last year, and I think it was a tiny sample. 97 plate appearances, hit 3 home runs. 87 plate appearances this year. He's got 127 ISO, and 89 WRC plus. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people really zeroing in on Romy Gonzalez shares, I think he's a decent enough hitter to consider some upside. He's made some pretty good contact along the way. It's all limited sample stuff. But if we're looking for cheap, along the lines of dart throw type plays to balance out a very popular Red Sox lineup or help pay for some of it, I think there's upside there. Ceddanne Rafaela, I think there's upside for him. 11 homers, 13 steals, 168 ISO, just an 87 WRC plus. Not at all consistent, but capable of delivering DFS upside via counting stats. Jamie Westbrook is also... Something just popped up. I am still here, right? No politics, Trey. Don't want to have to make Trey the first person I've ever had to kick out of chat on this site. I don't even know if I have that capability. I assume I do. Not that I'm going to do it, but... Obviously, there's a lot to talk about in that space, but this is not the forum. And I know you were related to something else. I saw there was a Martha Stewart comment in there about stock tips and so on, but let's keep it light. Anyway, Jamie Westbrook at the bottom of the Sox lineup. A mix and match piece in the middle infield. 3,000 second base on DK. 25 second base and outfield on FanDuel. He's there. He's right-handed. He'll also be in the lineup, but not the greatest spot. It's just a differentiation piece. On the Rockies side of things, don't think we did get it. As much as I do like talking about the Rockies when they're at home and they're getting ignored and the other team is really showing a ton of quality and getting all the popularity and the Rocks are maybe benefiting from Coors effects and not getting talked about, I don't love it today. Even with Talia hitting fourth, Brent Doyle 3, Sam Hilliard down lineup. Yeah. No Ryan McMahon in the lineup either. The appealing stack would probably be like a 3-man through there, but that's the way that everybody would approach this lineup. If I was doing it, I would probably grab those 3, and then as a differentiation, I'd probably go there, and I don't think I want the third outfielder, probably Rogers. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Hilliard in as a weird differentiator. I would probably stretch it to 5-man if I was going to roster many Rockies at all. Or if I was building like one key lineup and I was determined to use Rockies. I think it would be more different to use 5 rather than 3. But what I don't like about it is, again, Houck's just very, very good at keeping the ball on the ground, limiting run opportunities, keeping runs off the board overall. Doesn't walk anybody, so he's not issuing free passes and adding additional weight to it. So it's just not a good day to be going to Rockies overall. Blackman is cheap in the leadoff spot. He's getting on at a 329 clip. He's hit 6 home runs, stolen 5 bases, but it amounts to just a 92 WRC plus. Still low strikeout, medium walk, but against a pitcher who's got a decent amount of strikeout stuff and doesn't really walk anybody, not a great day. Tovar for 44.36, very high priced on FanDuel, not so much on DK. That's a big, big difference site to site. He's got a 199 ISO. He's up to a 101 WRC plus. He's hit 16 home runs. He's actually having a pretty effective year. It's been a little bit up and down. I was talking about good year up until like early June, and then I feel like June maybe tailed off, but now it looks like it's crept back up. So an effective player for DFS, and where he's cheap, that's not completely unappealing. But it's more in the vein of if you're going to Rockies, right? He's a key bat if you're going to the Rockies. Does he draw you to the Rockies? Do any of these guys? Probably not so much, given the pitcher on the mound. Maybe later in the week against some of the Red Sox other pitchers. Doyle for just $49.37. It's very much the same thing. He's cheap here. He's expensive here. 16 homers, 20 steals. He's earned shares, and he's earned being the top priority player in this lineup. But again, I think it's an if you're going to the Rockies situation. Talia for $4,100, $3,400. You're buying a ton of power upside. He's got 16 home runs in just 203 plate appearances, a 52.5% hard hit, 17.5% barrel, 295 ISO. It's a player who can absolutely mash. But again, against a pitcher who doesn't really give up that kind of contact. He also strikes out at a 32.5% clip. I think he's more of a target for Tanner Houck today than he is a extreme upside bet. And then the rest of the lineup kind of trails off. Brendan Rodgers has been all right. He hits the ball fairly hard, but doesn't really barrel it that much. 7 home runs, just a 126 ISO, 79 WRC+. I do think there's additional upside to be had from the player, and maybe in an any given slate sense. That's why he was the 4th man in from this group, and then I added Hilliard from the bottom. But he's not overly appealing. He's not a priority. Jake Cave and Jacob Stallings, not really priority bats. They're both all right. Again, if you're stacking Rockies, they're like mix and match guys for cheap prices through outfield and catcher. But by and large, just another outfielder, just another catcher. Maybe Stallings has a little bit more than that with his ability to drive the ball, but it really hasn't come through all that much in 173 opportunities, 154 ISO, 4 home runs. Hilliard, I think, is an interesting player. 2 home runs, 3 steals over his 36 opportunities this year, a 219 ISO. Obviously, it's not a big sample. Last year in 78 chances, 3 homers, 4 steals. 2 years ago, I think it has to go back another additional year, but it has some talent, some ability to drive the ball, as you can see through the contact profile and limited samples, even with mixed results over the last couple of years. For 29-26 as the 5th man in on a Rocky stack, I would consider him over anybody else in the second half of this lineup. And then Aaron Schunk hasn't really done much in his 17 opportunities so far this year, and that's all we got on him. Schunk, come on. How is Schunk not coming up? Seven homers and 11 steals over 299 with Albuquerque this year. 508 plate appearances there last year. 14 homers, 12 steals. Mix and match quality at best. He is a very cheap third baseman on DK. 3-position guy on FanDuel. So I guess he is in the mix if you're already building big stacks of Rockies, and a lot of them. Puts him in the mix, but non-priority player. Red Sox bats way up top, followed by Tanner Houck, followed by Rockies bats, and then no Austin Gomber. And the Rockies bats, not all that appealing, even as compared to normal spots for the Rockies bats. Astros and the A's doesn't look like I thought I saw these, though. Doesn't look like Labs has them yet. Maybe not. Royce Lewis beginning another rehab assignment on Tuesday. So another good player potentially coming back soon. Giancarlo Stanton on his way back. Trout on his way back as discussed. So Arrighetti, a reasonable consideration on strikeout upside against this Athletics team. A 26.1% strikeout rate for the projected version of the A's lineup. He's got a 25.4% over 17 starts, 80 innings this year. A 5.63 ERA, obviously, very unappealing, but a 4.34 xFIP underneath that. Still not great, but it shows that he's a little bit more talented than what this looks like. Hasn't been terrible for giving up home runs, but he's given up a few. He's given up a targetable hard hit rate, reasonable fly ball trajectory with some barrels mixed in, but not terrible through the premium contact. So he's like kind of mixed as far as the home run upside or danger goes, depending on which way you're looking at it. The walks are a problem. The whip is definitely a problem, but the 11.6% swinging strike rate has appeal. Little bit of ability to punch his way out of trouble against a free swinging A's squad. I do think value-wise, you could do worse than Spencer Arrighetti for your money. He is in that mix of pitchers where I was saying, hey, grab some shares of just these guys all in combination with one another. I think he's on that list. On the other side, Hogan Harris is just a target for Astros bats. He does have a 3.40 ERA over 47 2/3 in 8 starts, but a 5.22 xFIP is a lot more revealing. 1.45 whip even while he's pitching well in terms of the runs. 11.2% walks and 17% strikeouts. There's no real DFS appeal here against a very low strikeout, pretty high quality Astros lineup that is surged up to contention in the AL West because that Mariners team just is god-awful with their bats. Altuve from the top of the lineup, 5,400, 3,700 across sites. Phenomenal year, 14 homers, 15 steals. Just another Jose Altuve season on his way to the Hall of Fame. Bregman apparently was getting talked up quite a bit around the industry. Somebody was saying that earlier in the show. He's up to 255, 316, 408, a 106 WRC plus, 12 home runs on the season. Looking a lot more like previous seasons of Alex Bregman, or at least recent previous seasons of Alex Bregman. It's still very cheap at 4,200, 3,200 across sites. The Stros are the fourth highest overall total on the slate at 466. It's a very appealing spot, but I don't know if it gets overly popular. Trey's doing some best ball drafts. Have not done any best ball drafts. I'm not a big best ball guy. I said I was going to try and get into it more this year, but have not done. But there's still time. I know guys like our pal Neil Orfield and some others out there have been drafting best ball since the middle of last year's football season for this year. But yeah, I've been slow to come around to the best ball concept. I just can't stand the idea of having to wait that long for any kind of results or payoff or anything. It's like, I think some of them have like weeklies, right? Where it's like we've got a weekly payout and then we've got a season long. Am I correct about that? This is how little I play basketball. I know how it works. I haven't looked at any rankings for football yet this year. I got to get around to that. Drafts will be here before we know it. I can't remember what I've got keeper-wise. Oh, I've got Puka in the last round or the next to last round. That was a good pick. Outside of that, I can't remember what the hell I have. I think I traded my second round pick for this year. It's going to be a weird season. What's up, Melissa? Melissa's done 35 best ball drafts. There we go. Had some tickets. Nice. Weekly winners, yes. So that's crazy. All right, cool. Yeah, I got to get into it more. I realize that. So if Bregman's popular, it takes a little bit of the appeal away. It takes a little bit of the appeal away if the Astros are like runaway freight train popular overall, because a lot of opportunity keys in around the same hitters that'll be universal across everybody's lineups, especially the way they fall price-wise and positionally as compared to some of the other teams. But the top three are all very, very good hitters. Two of the three I absolutely love, and I'm happy to take shares of Alex Bregman. So I would go here. I think there's good reason to continue to go here, even with popularity. And as we've discussed before, outside of any individual popularity, or even as a three-man group, if it's extremely popular, or five-man, whatever you want to stretch to, just because something's popular doesn't mean it's unplayable or that you should even consider not wanting it. It's just a matter of putting it together with something that's a little bit less owned. Gain leverage elsewhere. That's why you use the leverage plays to be able to play these popular things and ride that upward trajectory. And it's more a matter of getting the less obvious thing right. There's nothing wrong with upside plays that are popular. Most owned guys are guys you like with upside. Oh, you're talking basketball. Neil and Davis Maddock. I don't know who Davis Maddock is. Two MLB best balls, both in first for Arch Stanton. That's awesome, dude. First year doing it. Wish I had drafted more lineups, visiting players on both teams, so when you hit, you hit. Or very similar players. I read that as visiting players. I was like, oh, that's an interesting strategy. I don't know how you would only get visiting players since everybody plays the same amount of home games and road games, so probably not an interesting strategy. Very similar players makes a lot more sense. So continuing on through the very usable Astros, regardless of any ownership, as I was saying. 55.39 for Jordan Alvarez. Still a little bit cheap for his talent on DK, for his results over the last few years, for the fact that he's one of the best hitters in all of baseball. FanDuel's got it mostly right at 39. He's up to 20 home runs, 244 ISO, 158 WRC+, 300, 385, 545 slash line. 46.9% hard hits, which is down a little bit compared to the last 2 years. 14.4% barrels is also down, but compared to most other players in baseball, those are still great numbers. Jainer Diaz, 4,000, 2,900, good value at catcher, 8 home runs, 103 WRC+, a strong slash line, makes very good contact for a cheap price. Jeremy Pena for 39.29, good enough considering how cheap he is. 16.3% strikeouts and 4.5% walks. Puts the ball in play quite a bit. Just under a 40% hard hit rate. 39.7 is acceptable enough. 274, 318, 387. Just a 101 WRC plus. 8 home runs, 11 steals. Across the board, it's a little frustrating because across the board, it feels like he could be a better player with minor improvements in just like one area, depending on what he wants to do. And it seems like maybe he's just not, I don't know if it's a matter of deciding, like actually making a decision, but it just seems like there's a little bit of like trying to be good at everything, but not quite good enough to be good at everything, while he could be good at say getting on base or hitting the ball hard for average, or maybe could transition into becoming more of a power bat. I think he's got multiple abilities, but it just doesn't coalesce into like one good, overly reliable player. He's just okay, but he's playable for what we need, especially at price. I just, compared to the other shortstops, he is very much an example of that guy I was saying. Like, you get your Corey Seager for value is a lot different than talking about Jeremy Pena, even at a lower price, compared to the Bobby Witts at the high price. So that's your scale. Witt, Seager, Jeremy Pena. Jake Myers, mix and match outfielder, 32-27. He's got 11 home runs, a 105 WRC plus 185 ISO. Very middle of the road type of a guy. Not expensive, totally playable on either side. Helps you differentiate and lower the cost of stacking up a bunch of Astros. So he does become more and more prioritized the more you build Astro stacks and the more you want to get to the top end of those guys. You spread out some shares across Myers. I like him better than, say, John Singleton in the next spot. Singleton's got a 116 ISO, 7 home runs, pretty limited output over 267 opportunities. Nice story that he's in baseball these days, but not an overly appealing player. Mauricio Dubon, kind of a mix and match hitter with a little bit of ability to hit for average. More of a correlated scoring option for the money at multiple positions. And then McCormick, underperforming his talent this year dramatically. Over 176 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 7 steals. Mediocre, bad slash line. Straight up bad. 64 WRC plus. He is very cheap. If you believe at all in the ability that we've seen from him over the last couple of seasons, you're a buyer at those prices, even in a bad lineup spot. If you go to the A's, I do think they have some appeal. We've been talking about them a little bit. No, Trey, that seems to be one of the bigger mysteries in baseball right now. Kyle Tucker with, ankle, I think? Twisted ankle or something was the initial diagnosis. It seemed minor, and now he's been out, and it's just been changing stories and lack of updates on him. So no real idea. But I thought he would have been back weeks ago at this point. If you're looking at the A's, Lawrence Butler off the top again. So far, over 207 plate appearances this year. Ignore the 237, the 309, 441's okay here, but 9 home runs is a decent amount of output for power over 207 opportunities. Got a 204 ISO and a pretty killer 11.7% barrel rate, 50% hard hits. Let me pull up this screen so I can actually point at it. Making really good contact so far this year. Costs just $3,500 on DraftKings. You can see $3,200 is starting to creep up on the FanDuel scale. This is around where he should be priced. $35 is extremely cheap on DraftKings. Not a bad way to get an A stack started. Miguel Andujar for $4,000, $2,600. Over 199, he's got 304, 327, 419 slash line. Creator runs 15% better than average. He's not really making killer contact, but he does have more power than he's shown. He's very cheap. He's an outfielder on DK, more of just a mix and match quality outfielder. Outfielder and first base on FanDuel for a very, very cheap price. Again, not much more than a mix and match guy, but I wouldn't mind having him at either spot on FanDuel if I was going to A's. JJ Bleday, 12 home runs, over 405 plate appearances, a 199 ISO, 114 WRC plus. Not an extreme power bat, but good enough to play from the left side against this pitcher. And he's another player just at a very effective bargain price, particularly on DraftKings, $3,800. That doesn't really match with what the power output's been. $3,100 on FanDuel is easily playable. Brent Rooker for $53.38, appropriately priced, if not underpriced on DraftKings. 17.8% barrels and 51% hard hits. He's got 22 home runs, 294, 373, 578 slash line, a 284 ISO, 168 WRC plus. He's still striking out a ton, but he's remade himself a little bit in terms of swing and miss on pitches inside the zone. He's been able to connect with more of them this year than he's been in years past, and has made a big difference even compared to last year when he had that good year of power output, but was kind of a mixed result. And all season long, I was saying he's going to come back down and didn't have the second half that he had the first half. This year, so far, he has really maintained and been really, really good. Langoliers is any given slate catcher with power upside, 226 ISO, 18 home runs, but no consistency at all. 4,100, 3,000, probably appropriately priced. He's not at all expensive. You can absolutely roll those dice. He makes a lot of good contact, 15.5% barrels, 46.4% hard hits, leading to the 18 home runs and the good ISO. So a good catcher, good catcher is probably a stretch, but a mix and match quality catcher with a very large ceiling. Abraham Toro, 33-27, mix and match quality player. 256, 299 on the front end of the slash line, 125 ISO, 96 WRC plus over nearly 300 plate appearances. Not great at third base. Probably prefer him at second for 27 on FanDuel, but even there, it's only okay. Seth Brown's got a lot of sneaky upside for 2,900, 2,600 across sites. Over 219 chances this year. He does have 7 home runs and 4 steals. Just a 139 ISO. Very bad slash line. He's a much better hitter than what he's been in this sample. Going back over the last couple of seasons, there's a lot of quality there, especially 2 years ago. Maybe more in terms of just counting stat upside, home runs, stolen bases, which is what he's done a little bit this year. I just think he's sneaky down lineup if you're already building with A's. So I wouldn't leave Seth Brown out too much. Zach Geloff I like, 5.42 in the home run model. He's got 12 homers and 11 steals in 321 opportunities. Just sub Mendoza, 260 on base and an 80 WRC plus. Another player who's not been at all consistent. He's striking out nearly 35% of the time, but does have a lot of individual counting stat upside, does have the ability to be a better player than this and to deliver on these prices at second base. Max Schumann having an okay season, over 265 chances, six home runs, 9 steals. Had a pretty big 2-3 days ago. 2,500, 2,800 with 3 position eligibility on FanDuel. Just a shortstop on DK limits him a little bit. Much rather have him in the outfield or at second base on the FanDuel slate. Astros bats, A's bats, Spencer Arrighetti. No thank you to Hogan Harris. Bryce Miller is downright appealing, and Tyler Anderson is probably pretty playable, more so for 79 on DraftKings than 96 on FanDuel, but I do think this price probably leaves him a little bit low owned. You don't get a ton of talent-based strikeout upside, 16.8% strikeouts this year, but he does have an 11.6% swinging strike rate that if he's finding the zone at all, I do think could be a little bit effective against a projected version anyway of the lineup that's got nearly a 30% strikeout rate. Those things go together a little bit. So it could be a sneaky upside day for Tyler Anderson, but it's not the best pitcher in the world to go chasing that with. 2.97 ERA looks great. A 1.17 whip is not bad. The swinging strike rate is terrific, but the 9.8% walk rate is a problem. The 5.02 xFIP is very problematic. Flyball pitcher, gives up a lot of barrels, has managed it through limiting hard hits, limiting exit velo to an extreme degree. He's been good at that over the past couple of seasons. 32.3% hard hits in 25 starts, 141 innings last year, 87 miles an hour of exit velo. Year before, 28.5% and 85 miles an hour of exit velo. Was very, very good at inducing medium and weak contact those 2 years. For the matchup at this price, I think he's on the board as one of your value plays. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. By comparison to these prices for these guys, do I like him more? No. If he was a little bit cheaper, it would be a better argument. But I think that probably applies to everybody. So he probably goes a little bit under-owned for the opportunity here as well as an SP2. This is just uncomfortably high given who it is. But again, that's probably going to go off at like 2% owned. I can't imagine he's popular against the team we've been targeting all season long. Let's see. It's only 5:40. We've only got one more game after this one. 7:20 start time tonight, by the way. Mr. Anderson. Ooh, I nailed it. I didn't quite exactly down to the... I was off by 0.02 of a percentage point. On FanDuel. On DraftKings... mid-single digits as far as his ownership. I think that's light. He should probably be owned in like the 12 to 15% range, given the opponent on the 2-pitcher site. I think the FanDuel number makes sense. I wouldn't expect anything more than 2 to 5% ownership on FanDuel. I feel like it's a little bit light on DraftKings. That might be a spot. Bryce is just good. 3.63 ERA, a 3.94 xFIP, 1.06 whip, a 6.7% walk rate, 22.7% strikeouts. It's had a little bit of a problem this year with power, premium contact, and home run upside, but manageable. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal. 1.06 whip is very good, a 10.7% swinging strike rate, Was very good in his first 25 starts of his career last year for all those different things. Has the ability to walk fewer hitters over a proven stretch, 4.8% last year. I like the upside for Miller to have a good day here. I could see a little bit of Angels power coming through if things go pear-shaped for Miller. But overall, I greatly prefer him to Angels bats. If I grabbed a bunch of shares of Bryce Miller for 84, 86 across sites, which I plan on doing, I would probably have a little bit of a hedge of Angels, but it would be limited. Just a couple stacks of their key bats would probably take care of it. I don't think they're that appealing as just an angle into the slate outside of a Miller hedge. They're okay. They're cheap, but I still don't love a lot of what's going on with this team. The Mariners, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of underperformance in that lineup. A lot of questionable bats. This is the... Didn't I drop this in? I thought I had dropped this in already. I might have put it in the wrong spot. I guess not. I really thought I had grabbed that lineup when we started. Anyway, this is the confirmed version of the Mariners lineup. Looks pretty similar. So, no Julio. Victor Robles has gotten interesting over the last few days. He stole like 5 bases over the weekend. He's playing every day now. He's driving the ball pretty effectively. This is a once upon a time former top prospect who was never truly bad with Washington, but never really landed either. And eventually just got himself DFA'd out of town. In 2019, over 617 opportunities, his one like full season, 155 games as a 22-year-old in the show. Got the early call-up as a top prospect. He slashed, and I think people forget this, 255, 326, 419, 165 ISO with 17 home runs and 28 stolen bases. For a rookie outfield, that's not a bad season. If Jackson Chourio did that this year, you'd be like, all right, Jackson Chourio's having a good rookie season. Jackson Chourio is not doing that this year. That's a better season. Maybe he gets there, but I don't think so. Not so far. Only made 189 plate appearances the next year over 52 games. I forget whether it was due to injury. He also just wasn't that good in those opportunities. 3 home runs, 4 steals, 220, 293, 315. Just kind of lost it there. And then the next few years in 21... that was 2020. That was 52 games, 189 plate appearances in the 60-game season. So he was just bad in the 60-game season and then kind of lost his gig. 369 plate appearances of terrible performance the next year, but was up and down that season with Washington. 2022, he did make 407 plate appearances with the big club. 6 home runs, 15 steals. He was pretty bad that year. But then the start of this year, this is last year. 126 plate appearances last year with Washington. Didn't hit any home runs, but he stole eight bases. And he slashed 299, 385, 364. Had a 112 WRC plus in that sample. There's a lot of ability here. He just kind of fell apart for a couple years after COVID. Had some mixed opportunities where he was getting jerked around time-wise. But if we're looking back, this is the 2019 Fangraphs report. So again, going back to that year where he had a killer debut season, he was the 5th overall prospect in all of baseball. And if you're looking at the traditional scouting grades, 70 grade speed, 50 grade power, 65 grade hit tool, or 60 real 65 potential, and really paid that off that rookie season. And then obviously did not have a number of good seasons in between. It's been several years since we've seen him be really good. But since that 2019 season came at age 22, dude's only 27 years and 2 months old. So we're dealing with a kid who's just now hitting his prime years. Regular opportunities abound. Tons of speed that has never gone away and won't go away for a number of years. He's mashing the ball so far. Stolen 11 bases in 82 plate appearances. Gotten on at a 392 clip. There's appeal for 2,400, 2,300. And I'm probably just harping on it because I want to speak it into existence because I picked him up and started him in the Dynasty League where I desperately need some stolen bases this week. JP Crawford, 4,200, 3,000 has been pretty bad this season, down to a 296 on base after getting on at a 380 clip last year. Not hitting for average, not creating runs, not hitting for power. 9 homers, 5 steals, a 143 ISO. Continues to hit leadoff, but I'm not entirely sure why. Jorge Polanco, 33-26 across sites. He's at 205, 291, 304. He's striking out 31.5% of the time. He's hit 6 home runs, 0.098 ISO, 76 WRC+. plus. Probably part of the reason why you've got JP Crawford still leading off. Cal Raleigh, 295 on base percentage, 20 home runs, a 212 ISO. Has been their best player, their best power bat, their best fantasy asset, but a lot of mediocrity, a lot of zeros. 8.86 today in the home run model, 16.6% barrels and 53.1% hard hits is terrific. 4,600 from 3,200 across sites. Probably still their most playable guy, but wildly inconsistent. Mitch Garver for 37-29 has 12 home runs, but he's way sub Mendoza, below a 300 on base and 88 WRC+. plus. Pretty limited this season. Dylan Moore outside of that stretch where he was really good for like 2 weeks. We're down to 212, 314, 407. Still at a 109 WRC+, plus 195 ISO, 8 home runs and 17 steals, so maybe some counting stat upside, some any given slate positional upside for a cheap price on either site, but not an overly good player. Mitch Haniger, 2,800, 2,400, has 8 home runs and not much else this year. Josh Rojas and Jonathan Klaas at the bottom of the lineup. Rojas, 4 homers and 6 steals in 308, and Klaas mostly here for defense, maybe a little bit of speed upside. But if you're stacking Mariners, the quality is like there, and it's really limited so far as what's gone on this year. You could take him out of the equation entirely. Probably could take him out. So now you're dealing with like Robles and 2 catchers. It's pretty thin and supports the Tyler Anderson has a little bit of sneaky appeal argument. If you are rostering Angels, I really don't love the spot. Like I was saying, it's more of just a hedge against some Bryce Miller. Rendon in the leadoff spot. Hey, he's up to 2,400 on FanDuel. Congratulations. 67 WRC plus over 124. Hasn't done anything notable all season long and going back into last year. Mickey Moniak for 28-25 has 6 homers and 6 steals. If he's hitting in the second spot, it makes him more appealing, but not very appealing overall. He's just not good. Just really has never delivered on that 1-1 overall pick. Taylor Ward for 4,400, 3,000 has been in a major rut. Apparently still getting calls on getting him traded out of town, which maybe gives him a boost second half. But he's been unreliable. 14 home runs, most of which came several weeks ago. Still making good contact, 13.7% barrels, 43.8% hard hits. But again, pretty diminished over recent weeks, down to a 99 WRC+. plus. Willie Calhoun, mix and match quality for 3,300, 2,700, 261, 328, 402 with very limited power, very limited upside. Does put the ball in play, but doesn't really do it with much force, much ferocity. Logan O'Hoppe for 42-31, mix and match catcher, 14 home runs, 191 ISO, 124 WRC+. plus. Probably, especially now that Taylor Ward has sucked for a month or so, I would say O'Hoppe's probably their best hitter. If it's not him, it's probably Zach Neto now. 4,000, 3,000 across sites. Neto's up to 13 homers, 16 steals, a 187 WRC, 187 ISO, and a 111 WRC+. plus. Making decent contact. Not egregiously bad in terms of strikeouts with a fairly low walk rate. Not one of these guys who's putting the ball in play with extreme frequency, but a reasonable option. It's just another guy that fits in at shortstop. Do you really want to go to him with so many better options? Drury, not getting anything out of him this year. .044 ISO and 1 home run over 178. He's been totally lost. Hit for a ton of power the last couple of seasons, but it's gone right now. I don't know if it ever comes back. Joe Adell, 34-28, has a lot of ability, never strings it together with any consistency. But when he connects, he connects. 12.2% barrels, 43.4% hard hits, 15 home runs in 304 chances, 12 stolen bases, 201 ISO. Those are the good things. The 198, 267, 399 slash line and the 16 points below average for run creation are kind of revealing about the downside. And Luis Guillorme is a backup caliber talent who is only here for defense. Bryce Miller, Tyler Anderson, Mariners bats, and really it's neither side is at all appealing for bats for me. Even at low ownership, I really don't know how much I want them. Like thought exercise wise, if somebody told you could have these teams and guaranteed nobody else on the slate is playing them, and you're building 150 lineups, how many lineups do you put them in? I think that's interesting. If literally nobody else is playing them. The correct answer to that is probably 150, if I'm being honest. But it's really the worst teams that you could possibly do that with. I really don't like them. I guess that was not a great thought exercise for the point I was trying to make, but it is an interesting one. I think the correct answer is probably 150 if nobody else is playing them. Giants, Dodgers. Last game up. Doesn't look like we've got lineups. River Ryan, 7,000 on DK, 6,800 on FanDuel, making his debut here. Hang on, let me yell at the dog. Joker, stop whatever you're doing. In 5 starts at AAA, 16 and a third this year, he had a 2.76 ERA with a 3.75 xFIP, 28.8% strikeouts and 9.1% walks. 97 and a third innings over 22 starts at AA last year. 3.33 ERA, but a 4.83 xFIP. It's a high xFIP. 23.7% strikeout rate. That's a big, big difference. 10.7% walks. That's not that big a difference. It's not inconceivable that he made strides year over year. But last year's numbers came as a 24-year-old pitching in AA. And this year, it's been really limited as far as how much he has pitched. And he's 25. It's not like he's crazy old, but he's on the upside, like age-wise. I just think we're a little bit in danger of a short start. Went 4 innings in his most recent start at the complex level. Why did he go back down? That might have just been to get work over the break. On the 16th, what was that? Yeah, that was last week. So that was getting work over the break. They sent him to the complex, I guess, knowing that he would come up and start this game, get him on a regular outing. Went 4 innings in that one. The output doesn't matter. He faced 16 hitters. Faced 21 hitters over 5 in his last 2 true AAA start on the 10th. 14 hitters over 4 in the start before that, and outside of that 5-inning game, has not completed 5 innings or even pitched into the 5th inning in any of his minor league appearances this year. So I really think we're pretty capped on innings. Maybe he gets into these median projections, but that's even probably in question, and I don't think there's much ceiling. Pretty tough to believe, even at price, that we're seeing much success here. Giants are a targetable enough team, 23.7% strikeout rate, but with a potential innings cap and a lot of pitchers of much higher quality with much more reliability in fairly similar price ranges, I don't think we're getting there. On the other side, obviously, as we've discussed a number of times already on this show, 7,500, 7,400 is just stupidly low price for Blake Snell, even against the Dodgers. And this version of the Dodgers has a 21.3% strikeout rate, which is not the uniquely low number that the Dodgers are usually putting up. Snell went on just the 14th. He went 7 innings, faced 21 hitters. That was against Minnesota. 1 hit, no runs, 8 strikeouts, no walks. Maybe he doesn't strike out 8 today. Maybe he gives up a run or 2. Handful of hits. It is the Dodgers. They are better than the Twins, but is this version of the Dodgers that much better than the Twins? It's arguable. Obviously, they've got a couple bigger threats with Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman in there. Will Smith, Teoscar are more comparable to guys who actually exist on the Twins. Or like one guy anyway, 2 guys. I just feel like we're way underpriced for Snell here. Yes, he's only made 2 starts since coming back from the IL back on July 9th. He had been out since June 2nd, and he had been out for a chunk of the earlier part of the season. We've dealt with a very limited version of Blake Snell, but knowing that he's capable of going 7 here, went 7 on the 14th, went 5 in his first start back on the 9th, so he wasn't even really limited in that one. Struck out 3, walked 3, just 1 hit in that one. So over the 12 innings that he's been back, he's given up 2 hits. He struck out 11 and walked 3. He's given up no runs to 39 batters. That's worth buying at 7,500, 7,400. He's going to be my pitcher in FanDuel. No question about it. He's got to be popular for those prices. Or not. If RG's got this right, that's the buy of the day for sure. RG's got the DraftKings number barely into double-digit ownership. And the FanDuel number in the mid-single digits. That's insane. I don't really understand that. I get that it's the Dodgers, which probably keeps the public away, and I guess that's what's accounted for in, of course, in ownership projections. I feel like the public is smarter than that, which is weird to say. I think that number's low, but even if, let's double it on both sites. Call it, 10-12 on FanDuel. You're absolutely still playing that, and I'm still pretty enthusiastic about it at that ownership. Call it 20-ish% on DraftKings. I'm still enthusiastic about it at that price. It might not work. It is the Dodgers, right? It is the opportunity for Snell to go out and give you 5 relatively disappointing, inefficient innings where he strikes out 4 but walks 4, gives up a home run, 3 earned runs, doesn't get you the quality start. They lose the game, so you don't get a win bonus. It's absolutely on the table for Blake Snell. It doesn't make it a mistake to play him in this spot ahead of Locke if he does that. 114 marked by Stuff Plus, 6.31 ERA, and I don't really care. I know that that's not real. 3.98 xFIP is more along the lines of expectation. Last year had a 2.25 ERA with a 3.62 xFIP. So between those numbers, I'm buying in more on the xFIP. 26.6% strikeout rate in the limited sample this year. Last year it was at 31.5%. You can see the inefficiency, even in this ridiculously good season. 13.3% walks. He's always going to walk too many hitters. That's why he ends up short starts on some occasions. But the high-end starts are super high-end. 15.3% swinging strike rate last year, down to 13.4 in a small sample this year, but indicative of the upside for this pitcher. Absolute bargain of bargains on this slate for Blake Snell at these prices, even against the Dodgers. As people have been pointing out in chat, the bottom half of the Dodgers lineup is extremely limited with this version of the Dodgers lineup. An underperforming Chris Taylor having the worst season of his career. An underperforming Enrique Hernandez having the worst season of his career. A mediocre Miguel Vargas over 72 plate appearances hasn't done anything. Andy Paez, I do think, is a good rookie hitter, but he's a rookie hitter with a 24.8% strikeout rate that Blake Snell can exploit, and Snell's not going to run into issues with with him in terms of power, at least not as far as like a threat. Miguel Rojas has been all right, over 207 plate appearances, but a non-threatening hitter. Low strikeout, sure, but the guys behind him in the lineup more than make up for that, and several of the guys above him do. 1 through 4 are all threats. Shohei Ohtani could ruin the play on the first plate appearance of the day. He's got 30 home runs, 23 steals, a 315, 401, 638 slash line, a 323 ISO. He's created runs 86% better than average. There's only one player in the game that I'd rather have at the plate than Shohei Ohtani, and that's Aaron Judge. He is just that good. Will Smith, 55-36, very affordable for Will Smith's quality. 15 home runs, a 213 ISO, 130 WRC+. Freddie Freeman, 10.1% barrels and 40.8% hard hits, just a 15.1% strikeout rate to go with that contact quality. He's down to 292, 395, 503 with a 210 ISO and a 152 WRC+. Obviously, over the last few seasons, been a 300 hitter, a 400 on base, slightly better, but these are still fantastic numbers. 53-39, I feel like he's a little bit more discounted than he ought to be on DK. Teoscar for 48-33 has 20 home runs, a 218 ISO, a 127 WRC+. Absolutely mashing when he makes contact, 14.8% barrels, 48.3% hard hits. Strikes out a ton. Could be a strikeout target for Snell, but could definitely get involved if you're going to Dodgers. It is your top 4 here, and they're all high priority. It's a $5,500 average for the top 4, including Ohtani on DK. That's not bad. $3,900 is more expensive on FanDuel as the average. Only slightly relative to cap and 4-man, but you instantly, by stretching to the 5th man, you lower the average on DK by a little bit more. So I think if you are playing DK, you probably do want to stretch to a 5th. I think go like that and just throw Paez into it. That's the most common build, obviously, among people who are rostering Dodgers. They're probably not going to be all that popular on the other side of this, though. Low to mid single digits for everybody not named Ohtani, and Ohtani still in single digits. On the Giants side, going up against Ryan, there's a little bit of mixed appeal. It's mostly around the obvious guys: Ori Soler, Lamont Wade, Elliot Ramos off the top of the lineup, Patrick Bailey if you're rostering catchers. Soler's got 11 home runs, seeing a little bit more opportunities. He's maybe slowly coming around up at the top of the lineup here. He's very cheap for his power upside going up against a kid who's never pitched in the show before. I like the opportunity for Soler for some power to come through, but 8.61, that is diminished. A lot of other days in previous seasons, this would be 10 plus for Soler. Lamont Wade, tons of ability to get on base, 427 on base, 305 average, 146 WRC plus over 220 opportunities, mashing the ball when he makes contact with it, an excellent left-handed hitter, 2,600, way too cheap on FanDuel, 3,900, dramatically cheap on DraftKings. If you're going to Giants and Lamont Wade is hitting second against this pitcher, do not skip Lamont Wade. He is a terrific hitter, very, very good for correlated scoring, got some power upside. Elliot Ramos for 45, very, very cheap on DK, considering the 15.6% barrels, 49.1% hard hits. FanDuel for 33 is honestly pretty cheap, too. 14 home runs at 219 ISO, a 145 WRC plus, and 275 chances. 10.52 in the home run model today. Patty Bailey has a 41.2% hard hit rate for only 3,800 if he's hitting cleanup, switch hitting catcher with appeal. 273 opportunities. He got a 119 WRC plus with seven home runs on the board. Reasonably good slash line. Conforto and Chapman, lefty righty, and I'll throw Yaz into that mix as well because they're all basically the same guy in terms of contact. Lefty righty lefty trio down the bottom of the lineup for 38, 43, 34, and 27, 33, 24 across sites. Two outfielders and a third baseman. You could do worse. All of them have power. True, real, very clear to see power. All of them have had success over the last couple of seasons in mixed ways. Years to point to, years to shy away from. 194 ISO so far for Conforto, 174 but 13 home runs, 10 stolen bases, and 416 plate appearances for Chappie, and 8 home runs and 254 opportunities for Yaz with a 197 ISO. All three guys above average for run creation this season. It's kind of a, it's sneaky, I guess is the right word. It's not going to be an overly popular trio of hitters. Even as just like an odd three-man, if you've built, let's say, a Kansas City Royals stack, where you're going catcher first, second, shortstop, and one outfielder. No, I guess that doesn't work because you need... oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, one outfielder. And then you fill 2 outfield spots and third base with Conforto, Chappie, and Yaz. For those prices, for a total of 11.5, an average of 38 against a rookie, that's not awful. That's a lot of premium contact and a lot of power upside. What you need, of course, is 1 or 2 of those guys or somebody around them in the lineup to get on base to support additional upside beyond just a home run, just a couple of doubles. And you need those guys each to succeed if you're stacking them and only them as a 3-man. But it's kind of interesting given that positional fit, outfield, third base, outfield, and specifically with how that would fit together with the Royals. I don't dislike that. Thairo from late in the lineup for 35 at second base, 27 on FanDuel. Could have been included in that group. He doesn't do the same things in terms of the premium contact numbers, but he's got 9 home runs, a 139 ISO, and a 73 WRC plus aren't appealing. But he does have power, and he's been better in years past than he's been over 341 chances this year. He's a mix and match quality option, but somebody to at least keep in mind at the bottom of the lineup. And then Brett Wisely for 164 plate appearances, 279, 313, 416, 108 WRC plus. He's been all right as a mix and match infielder. Blake Snell, way, way up at the top of the board. Those are phenomenal prices for Blake Snell. Again, even if it doesn't work out, it is not a mistake to play Blake Snell at this price in this spot. Dodgers bats probably number 2 behind that, followed by Giants bats. And really, River Ryan, I'm not buying. Maybe if we see something this time, we buy next time. But for me, I think we're getting a short start. I really do. I think we're looking at 5 innings, if that. And I don't know what the upside actually looks like. And that's your slate, gang. Top to bottom, up and down. Little last look at the pitching board here. Cole Ragans all the way up at the top. Totally worth paying for even against Arizona. I like that, but we do have a ton of good values on the board with good pitchers. We're not talking cheapo bargain bin crap. We're talking about good pitchers that are just mispriced. Hunter Green's very good. Could exploit some high strikeouts in that Braves lineup. Like him a lot better at 82 on DK than the FanDuel price. Ronaldo, just kind of middle of the road for this slate. He's better looking at 9,000 on DK than he is at 9,900 on FanDuel, but that does make him tied for the most expensive DK pitcher today. It's just that kind of slate. So playable, but also skippable. Ranger Suarez, love the pitcher. 8,800 is a bargain for him on the DraftKings board. Love that. 10-7. I'd be happy to pay it if I could afford it on FanDuel. I suspect that I'm probably going to be taking some value pitching on FanDuel and going to some bats, though. Probably some of Rangers' teammates, as far as some bats that I'm hoping will go a little bit by the wayside. Those bats are drawing down against Bailey Ober, who is our, sixth highest projected pitcher. I think Ober's not misprojected. I think there's a strong path to success for him. I also think there's a very strong path to failure for him. And I like the Philly side a little better than I like him. So I'm going toward bats, but I don't think it's a mistake to consider him, especially in a big pool of lineups. I like him better at 83 than I do at 92. Bryce Miller, total bargain at 86, 84. Fire away against that Angels squad. Blake Snell, again, just way mispriced. Even against the Dodgers, he should at least be in the 8s. If you wanted to make him cheap, put him in the 8s. Make him Bryce Miller's prices. It's stupid to have Blake Snell at 74, 75 on this slate. He should be wildly popular, but it doesn't look like, at least per RG, that he is. How playable in Coors Field. 85 is a bargain, even for Coors Field, for that pitcher. I think that is highly, highly playable, and if he is low owned, I think that's an opportunity. 10-2 on FanDuel, it works a lot differently. Arrighetti against Oakland has just enough upside, just enough talent, just enough strikeout. Could easily go pear-shaped. I would definitely hedge with A's bats on the other side of that one, but he's cheap. Tobias Myers, pretty low faith there, but he's very cheap at 72. A few shares, a few darts on DK, probably not as much on FanDuel. Tyler Anderson, I think, is more worthwhile. 7,900 with a similar projection on DraftKings. There is a $700 price difference there. Seattle's kind of a cakewalk matchup with some strikeout potential for him. But again, he is very, very skippable on sites. It just depends on what you want to do with your value shares. 9,600 on FanDuel doesn't really work for me for Tyler Anderson outside of rendering him low owned. Eric Fed is a big no against Texas. Michael Lorenzen it's just on matchup if you go there. And with all the value on the board, I don't see the need to do it. He could have a successful day at those prices. I just think there's a lot of other guys that are priced the same that are probably a little bit more likely to have that same day. Javier Assad for me is pretty much a no at those prices. River Ryan, we just went over. I think we're getting a short start, and I don't really believe, at least not right now. Gilbert Diaz is a no at price. Hogan Harris is a big no on talent and everything else. And Austin Gomber's pitching against the Red Sox at Coors Field. I do not like it. It's a lot of talking. Felt like a bigger slate than it was. Take a quick peek at the home run board, and then let me get out of here to get everything updated. Kyle Schwarber, the top overall play of the day from the home run board here. Not far off the mark, though. Rafi Devers in that Coors Field game. Bryce Harper bringing up the 3 spot from that Phillies lineup, and then 2 spots later you get Tyler O'Neill. So obviously a pretty deadly 4-man there if you wanted to just go with the key obvious go-to bats from the Red Sox and the Phillies. I think the Phillies' low ownership was probably going to help to offset some of those Red Sox. It's just a matter of what do you get pitching-wise if you're going to those 4 players. What else is in your lineups? Both of those teams do have lower-cost guys to kind of help you out with that. Guys like Romy Gonzalez that I mentioned, Ceddanne Rafaela down lineup for the Red Sox, for example. Ozuna, not uninteresting from that Braves lineup. Some of the obvious guys showing some upside for power. Leadoff Lou Bob is not interesting. Reese Hines, that's a fucking guy's name. I was trying to remember that guy's name 2 hours ago when I was talking about the Reds. He's not in the lineup today. Elliot Ramos from that San Francisco lineup could be a little bit sneaky. Rooker's obvious from the A's side if you're going there. And there's Trey, the 3rd man from that Phillies lineup, and adds a ton of expense if you're adding him into the equation as well to get to with those 4 guys. But you're not skipping Trey that many times. So Michael Knack calling for the Wong Dong. I like it. You know, I like that player. I like that catcher. I love the pricing on Wong. One last time for him. 44, hitting 3rd against a lefty in Coors Field. He's got to be popular. Let's see what the popularity looks like. We'll end the show with Red Sox popularity. Shocking. All right, this is FanDuel. He's really low owned on FanDuel. Advantage FanDuel players. As I've said a number of times, with no positional blocker that I care about on at first base on this team, just treat Connor Wong like he's a very good average, mediocre power kind of a bat at first base for a cheap price. Or FanDuel-wise, it's a fair price. DraftKings, you're just getting him as a catcher, obviously, for 44, which is a cheap price. On DK, he's got to be more popular. I tell you what, it's not bad. It's 3 times the popularity as what he's showing on FanDuel, but it's not bad for a Coors game. And Tyler O'Neill is shockingly low owned for 5,700 at Coors. I get Devers being low owned because it's lefty, and people think that that'll disadvantage him against Gomber in this spot. It's not a big deal, and we'll probably get plate appearances against the bullpen. But O'Neill for 57 with tons and tons of just obvious upside. It's another spot where either DK's got it wrong, it's just barely into the double digits. Seems underowned if that's the true number. I feel like DK's a little low on that ownership projection. Tyler O'Neill should probably be 18 to 20% owned over there, and then like Wong, Ref Snyder in like the mid-teen level, and then Devers probably at that level, and he's projected to be lower than that. Romy Gonzalez, who again I think is very interesting and is only 4,000 over there, is another guy that is very low owned. And then if you get to Yoshida and Ceddanne Rafaela, it's single digits. The Red Sox are not impossible to roster, ownership-wise, price-wise, or anything else for that matchup. Interesting stuff, gang. Let me get out of here. Let me get projections updated, get the site updated. Good luck out there tonight. Oh, Jake, that's an interesting point. Let me go back to that. All right. Gomber gives up the booty to lefty power. That wasn't on my radar. Let me see. A little bit of a balancing act there, maybe. Let's see. So far this year, 6 of the 18 home runs in just, 6 home runs to 82 lefties and 12 home runs to 335 righties. 48 slugger allowed to lefties, 455 allowed to righties. Get splits. Do I get X slug in splits on? I don't. Boo. Yeah, no relevant numbers in StatCast as far as the splits board goes. I was hoping to get a hand-by-hand X slug. But look, overall, we know that Austin Commer's not a very good pitcher. We know that he's super targetable. That ability to give up power to, or propensity to give up power to left-handed hitters just makes the Red Sox all that much more appealing. Jarren Duran seems like will be popular regardless, but Rafi Devers going dramatically underowned, especially with that little nugget sprinkled on top at the end of the show. So good call there. Love that shout out there, Jake. Good stuff. And let's get the hell out of here for real this time. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow for more of this. See ya.